Meeting of Bristol City Council's Public Health and Communities Committee. In a second, members of the committee will introduce ourselves, but I'll make the usual safety announcement first. Because this is a Friday morning, we are expecting the fire alarm to be tested at 10 o'clock. So for everyone in the public gallery present with us, don't worry about that. Unless it continually sounds, then or sounds at any other time, and if that happens, please proceed back down the stairs from the gallery into the lobby of City Hall, down the ramp to your right, and assemble outside the cathedral. We are, of course, meeting still when southern England is in the heat wave warning. We've done our best to make the chamber as comfortable as possible. On balance, we decided, because the sun isn't on this side of the building this morning, that having the curtains open and the windows open was better than the reverse. We are going to take regular breaks during the meeting. We normally have one break halfway through the meeting, but we're going to take regular breaks after each substantive item today, so that people can have the opportunity to move about, refresh their glasses. I think everyone in the public gallery, hopefully you were advised on the way in that there is a water fountain just at the entrance to the public gallery. So if you need to pop out at any time for a drink, please do so. I'll just make a sort of general appeal to everyone as well. I'm sure we're all uncomfortable at the moment, and while we always try and be respectful and dignified and friendly towards each other in these meetings, let's please be extra mindful of not raising the emotional temperature as well as the heat temperature in the room. So welcome to everyone who's with us in person. Also welcome to everyone who is watching online because this meeting is being webcast. Hello, everyone. Right, so I'll just now ask members of the committee to introduce themselves. I'm Stephen Williams. I'm the Liberal Democrat Councillor for Henleys and Westbury-on-Trim, and I'm the chair of this committee, and I'll ask the Vice Chair to introduce herself.
Good morning. My name's Councillor Johnson, or Carol Johnson. I'm Councillor for Hallfield Ward and Vice Chair for this committee.
Good morning, I'm Councillor Lisa Durston, Councillor for Philwood Ward.
Morning, I'm Emily Clark, one of the councillors for Bedminster Ward, the Labour councillor. Good morning, my name is Badruddin, I'm Hanbury Braintree councillor. Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Ed Fraser, Green Party councillor for Eastfield Ward. Thank you to everyone for coming today.
Hello, I'm Ellie Freeman, Green Party councillor for Bedminster with Emily.
Cara Levan, Green Party councillor for St George Central, and I've got a broken finger. I'm not being rude.
Abdul Malik, Green Party councillor for Ashley Ward.
Right. Thank you, colleagues. There are also various officers with us for the meeting today, and I'll introduce them as their item of business comes up. But with me throughout the meeting, I've got Bronwyn Falconer, who is the clerk for this committee. Okay, if we go on to item 2, there is an apology for absence. Councillor Feehans, one of the Green Party members of the committee, is unable to attend today. So Councillor Ellie Freeman, who introduced herself just now, is substituting for her. Agenda item 3, this is for members of the committee to declare any interest that isn't already disclosed in the register of members' interest if it's relevant to a topic in front of us today. Does anyone have anything they wish to declare? No? Thank you. Agenda item 4 is the minutes of our last meeting held on the 1st of May 2026. Normally we nod these through as a true record of the previous meeting. Just to prove that some of us do actually read the minutes, I read them yesterday. There is an error which will be corrected and the minutes will be republished, that the items discussed under item 9, which are community cohesion, the heading is community cohesion, clearly relate to the previous item of the annual scrutiny of the Community Safety Partnership. So the minutes will be corrected to remove that heading from the middle of that item, and the minutes that should reflect the discussion on community cohesion will be added. So that will be republished, and we'll acknowledge that again at the next meeting. The next item 5 is anything that I wish to say as chair, and I'm now giving updates on my other complementary role to this committee, because I'm also chair of the city's Health and Wellbeing Board. Since this committee last met, the Health and Wellbeing Board has had a joint session with the Children's One City Board to look at the improvement framework for child health. And we've also continued to look at the development of the neighbourhoods programme for the NHS and public health going forward that the national government have mandated us to do. And we've also been affected by the restructuring of the Integrated Care Board, which again is something that is an initiative of the current government. Let's see if it survives under the change of leadership that's coming up. But part of that restructuring means that our Integrated Care Board, which is Bristol, North Somerset and South Gloucestershire, a regional health board, is now expanded to include Gloucestershire. And the Care Partnership that brings together NHS partners, care partners and the voluntary sector and other statutory agencies for that region I am chairing for this municipal year. Right, agenda item 6 is the public forum, which is the opportunity for members of the public to ask questions and also to make statements. And we set aside 30 minutes for this item, so the clock and my phone currently says it's 9:40, so we'll proceed with this item until 10:10. Just to explain how it works for questions, where somebody has submitted a question or a number of questions, a written answer should have been provided to everybody, and so there is no need to read out your original question or comment on the answer, but you do have the opportunity to ask up to 2 follow-up questions that must be new questions on the topic that you've submitted, not on any other topic. So I'll work my way through the questions first. And while I've got an indication over whether people were intending to attend the meeting today, obviously the weather may have affected some people about whether they wish to turn up or whether they've got school arrangements that have affected them. But the first question I've got in front of me is from Councillor Kaz Self, which is about concerns about the discourse around LGBTQ plus people. Kaz was coming, but I can't see her, and because she's not here, which is a shame, because I did want to reflect on rising levels of hatred towards the LGBT community, of which I am one, but she's not here. So, sorry? She's watching, right. She's watching. There is a we'll just make this point, because there is a reference to the Tiptoe drama that was on Channel 4 over the last few weeks, which I watched, and I'm not easily disturbed usually by television programs, but without being a spoiler, the end episode of that did really shake me and brought home to the fact that although advances for lesbians, gays, bisexuals and transgender people have advanced enormously in recent times, we have to be ever diligent about that and not take it for granted. And there are people around the world and in this country who are trying to reopen past divisions. That's all I'll say about that. Lucille Smith was question 2. We weren't sure whether Lucille was coming. Is Lucille Smith here? Looks as though you are, Lucille. Good morning. There should be somebody with the microphone. Actually, sorry, this is a change in procedure. Normally there's a human being who gives you the microphone, but if you'd like to approach one of the two microphone stands at the foot of the stairs, and as I said, Lucille, you've got the written answer, but you can ask up to 2 supplementary questions.
Yeah, well, I didn't feel I got a full answer, so I'd just like to ask again. Would Bristol City Council review its policy and introduce exemptions or substantially reduce charges for not-for-profit organisations? Can't hear? Should I sit here?
I think the human being with the microphone was probably better.
Can you hear me now? Great. It's gone now. Would Bristol City Council review its policy and introduce exemptions or substantially reduce charges for not-for-profit organisations delivering clear public health and community benefits?
Thanks, Lucy. And just in case that wasn't picked up by everyone, Lucille asked me whether the council would consider introducing exemptions for not-for-profit organisations from the licence fee for operating in Bristol's parks. We've got an agenda item about this, so I don't want to go through everything that councillors will be saying when that item comes up, so please wait for it. But what I'll say now, Lucille, is the key phrase in that question was not-for-profit organisations. If any organisation is operating in the city's parks and is a not-for-profit organisation, is a non-commercial organisation, then they won't need a licence. The licence applies where somebody is operating a business that is commercial and is seeking to make a profit. That's when the licence fee applies. If any organisation is genuinely not a business, is not set up with the commercial imperative to make profit, then it is outside the scope of the licence scheme. When we introduced the licence scheme, after taking some feedback from people, we were mindful of the fact that some businesses did have low turnovers. So I put in place a £25,000 turnover threshold for which there would be a 50% discount. It wouldn't have been until people actually applied for their licences that we got a truer picture of what the sort of range of commercial activities in parks were. And I've said constantly that we will keep this under review and we'll make adjustments when necessary. And when we come to the item, you will see that we're going to honour that commitment right in front of you this morning. Lucille, yeah, so everyone who has submitted a question is entitled to ask 2 supplementaries if you want to ask a follow-up, but do bear in mind there are other people in the queue behind you. You can.
In response to what you just said, really, what is the definition of commercial activity and not-for-profit if you're a business but you're not making a profit? Are you exempt?
The only definitions that our officers can follow are the legal ones. If somebody has set up a business, is registered with HMRC to pay tax as a business, whether it's income tax or corporation tax, if they're registered with Companies House, if they're incorporated as a limited liability company, then clearly that is a commercial operation. Whether a business makes a profit, of course, lots of factors come into that. It depends what deductions people make from their income. I don't think the City Council can adjudicate on that. That's why we've applied a turnover test, originally set at 25,000, that any business that has a turnover of 25,000 does qualify for a 50% discount. But when we come to the agenda item itself, you'll see that there is a proposal to make a further concession on that front, but we'll come to that when we come to it. Right, thank you, Lucille. The next person I have with a question question, who's indicated that he's come in, is Andrew Bradbury about Nordic walking. Is Andrew here? Thank you, Andrew. If you could, it looks as though you have to awkwardly position yourself close to the microphone.
Thank you, Councillor. My supplementary is this. The Council implies in its response that it is neutral between all activities which make a charge, but that has destroyed our Nordic walking community at Blaze Castle Estate. Will you pause enforcement while you review the impact of your policy on small groups which are not businesses?
Thank you, Andrew. I can make similar points to what I made to Lucille. Where organisations are not businesses, then they don't need a licence. If they were a charity, then they would not need a licence. There are organisations that provide Nordic walking in the city that are not commercial organisations. They don't need a licence. Where somebody is making a charge, has a membership scheme with a range of membership options, and there are different Nordic walking businesses operating in the city, then they will need a licence, both to prove that they have the necessary qualifications and insurance to provide that commercial service, and to reflect the fact that they're using public property for commercial gains. That's the basic premise of the licence. If an organisation, commercial or otherwise, can demonstrate that its core business is providing a health and well-being benefit, and quite clearly, a lot of companies do that. Our gym providers that we engage in the city and the private sector clearly provide a health and well-being benefit. We have to weigh up whether that should attract public subsidy, but it would be difficult for us to waive a licence fee in that situation, because then we'd be in the moral hazard of other organisations saying, well, I provide some public benefit too. So the better way to approach that would be, if an organisation does feel that it provides mental well-being, physical well-being benefits, to approach the council. And I have been saying all the time that there have been questions about this. Please have a dialogue with our parks officers. Our parks commercial officers are talking to the director of public health and the public health team, and where a group can show that it is providing mental well-being or physical well-being benefits, then there may be another way that we can assist that group to continue its operations. But we can't contemplate waiving the fee for Nordic walking per se, because just desktop research shows that there are a range of Nordic walking operations. But if it is a small voluntary organisation, albeit running on a commercial basis, then we may be able to find another way to smooth the path going forward. Andrew, you could ask another one, but do you want to move on? Thank you. I've just been told that we've adjusted the volume on the microphones, so don't worry about crouching down now. The next person who I've got who's indicated that she's come in is Sharon Humphreys. Sharon, are you here?
She can stay in her seat. Sam. Okay. My question is the aim of now charging for commercial activities in parks to make them safe?
The policy decision to introduce this licensing scheme was taken some time ago, and it was in stages. The previous administration had both public safety in mind, but also had an income target as well for parks, I think of 55,000, which the parks budget was reduced by, and income from a licensing scheme was meant to make up that difference. This administration, we've looked at this many times and have tried to make the best of it, has downgraded, if you like, that money-making element of it by introducing, first of all, lower fees than were originally proposed, but also introducing a small business discount for the £25,000 threshold. So it now isn't really an income generator for the park service. As you'll see if you've looked at the committee report, the predicted income, although some people have yet to apply for a licence, who we know are operating in our parks, we think is going to be probably 23 to 25,000. We spend in the region, I think, of 13 million on our parks and green spaces, so it's clearly not a major income generating factor for the council. But it is important that we are satisfied as custodians of that public land, that everyone who is operating on a commercial basis in our parks is insured to do so, and it, where necessary, has the relevant qualifications. So it is now more of a regulatory imperative for having the scheme and continuing it.
One more question, thank you. On that basis, would the committee consider not charging Let's Walk Bristol, which is a not-for-profit organisation, and can demonstrate by insurance, risk assessment, qualification and the management of group activities that its sessions are foreseeably safe as they possibly can be?
Sharon, I got the gist of your question, but I couldn't hear the very specific, relevant point of what organisation you're speaking on behalf of.
Let's Walk Bristol.
Let's Walk Bristol, thank you. Well, I'll repeat what I said to Andrew, that I would strongly encourage everyone who's got a concern about their licence to have dialogue with our parks officers who are listening at the moment about the nature of their business. If it is a business, we can't say you don't need a licence, because that's the moral hazard as I described earlier. But if the nature of your business is providing a health benefit, then enter into a dialogue about that, and there may be other ways that we can help cover the licence fee itself. But what we can't do is say you don't need to be licensed, because this is a public confidence issue. We couldn't say for some organisations, all right, you've persuaded us, we don't need a licence, and then maybe a bigger commercial organisation that is providing essentially the same service does need a licence. That would open us up not only to a moral hazard, but I think to legal challenge. I have already had emails from people businesses that have applied for and have obtained their licence saying, I've complied with what is a bylaw in the city. I am aware of competitors who have willfully not done so. So the longer this goes on, we're exposed to legal challenge. But please have the dialogue with parks officers. And none of us want this scheme to be onerous. That is not the intention of it. It is about public safety. So we do want to find a way forward for everybody. Right. This is on the same topic. Catherine Brown, you could also... are you here, Catherine?
Yes, hello.
Right. What I would say, Catherine, is that, bear in mind what I said about the half an hour for the time, if everyone does take their right of 2 supplementaries, I can't get through the list and the statements, so please, everyone, exercise your discretion.
I realise I asked 3 questions, so I'm only going to have 1 supplemental question to save time for others, and that's around enforcement. You've just said, Stephen, that one of the justifications for the scheme is safety. And the report says that you're not doing any formal enforcement of the scheme at the moment. So can you tell us how, in practice, you're actually driving those safety improvements at the moment?
Thank you, Catherine. It is common practice when a public body introduces any new scheme, whether it's a traffic restriction, new parking charges or whatever, to be light touch with enforcement in the first few months or so of it being introduced. And that's what we're doing here. There will come a point, though, where we are going to have to take enforcement action if we discover that any commercial business is operating in our parks without a licence. They're already transgressing council bylaws that say quite clearly that if you want to run an activity in Bristol's parks for which you charge, you must ask for permission. So that's the basic underlying premise anyway at the moment. But everyone will now need to have a licence as well, which is another layer. I mentioned the previous answer that I've already had businesses saying, I've got my licence, what about this person who hasn't got one? Well, we will be contacting people who we believe are operating and don't have a license and encouraging them to come forward, because they are already in breach of our bylaws by not doing so. There will come a point where we will have to enforce those bylaws. It's a difficult process. It involves the courts. We obviously do not want to go down that route. It is in everyone's interests to apply for a license. And to some extent, you mentioned practicalities of it. It could become self-enforcing. If I was a member of the public and I wanted to engage a personal trainer in St Andrews Park, which is the nearest park to where I live, I would look at the City Council website as well as their own website and see whether they are licensed by the council to operate. If they're not licensed, then they quite clearly operating outwith the law, haven't satisfied the council, they've got appropriate qualifications and insurance. So I think there'll be some self-policing by customers of this as well. But if necessary, and I want to make this very clear, if we find that a business is willfully not applying for a license when quite clearly they need one, and other people who are operating similar businesses in our parks have applied for licenses, then we will obviously have to take enforcement action. But we're at the stage at the moment of the first few months of a scheme being introduced, a scheme that has generated some controversy. So we're being light touch for now, but that will have to end at some point.
One quick supplemental question. Can you publish the results of this light touch informal enforcement? I think that would be good for transparency.
Well, what I've just said obviously is recorded and will be published in the minutes. I don't think there's anything more to say about it. It's sort of common sense. When anybody introduces something new, you're gentle with the enforcement to begin with, but then there will come a point in time when it is simply unfair not to take enforcement, because the vast majority of people who are operating activities have applied for a license. As you'll see from the report itself, I think it's 85 businesses. Right, that was the test. There are roughly just under 90 businesses that have applied for a license so far. It would be completely unfair on them if we didn't take enforcement against people who have not applied for a license. There are some people who have been vocal in the media who run commercial organisations at quite a large level in our parks who we know have not applied for a license, and we will be requesting that they apply for a license. If they don't, we will take enforcement action against them. I hope that's as clear as I can be. The next person I've got on my list for a question, and this is also on parks, is Rebecca Wilson. Rebecca, are you here? And if I could say to Rebecca and to the next few who are here as well, please only ask a supplementary if it's something new and not sort of getting me to say in a different way, something I've said already, otherwise we'll run out of time for people who are coming after you.
As a result of the scheme. The scheme's turnover for the council is far below what the council forecast. What specific and measurable criteria are you going to use to determine whether the parks licensing scheme is successful or unsuccessful?
See, with the end of your question, deeming whether it's a success is actually going to be quite hard. It's a bit like prevention in public health, which is part of the core business of this committee. You know you need to do it, but you can't necessarily prove the outcome. So by having a regulatory framework in our parks, we think we are protecting the public from maybe unscrupulous operators who are not qualified to do what they say they do or don't have adequate insurance cover, but we couldn't prove that it was a success unless there was an incident that tested that. We do know from elsewhere in the country, and it's important to say that Bristol is actually quite behind other local authorities. Most local authorities, all of our neighbours, for instance, in the West Country, have these schemes or variants of it in practice. But we do know from a council in Surrey that a commercial dog walker lost control of the dogs, that there was an incident and somebody died. We don't want that in Bristol. We want to make sure that we have protected people as much as we reasonably can. So the success is quite hard to say in terms of regulation. In terms of income, it's bluntly not going to be a great success, but that's because in the discussions I had with officers before we made the scheme live, I substantially reduced the original proposed fees and then introduced, after the initial phase of listening, a small business discount as well. So the income target that was set by the last council, not this one, of 55,000 is clearly not going to be met. As I said earlier, it's going to be probably 25,000. So commercially, in terms of income generation for parks, it is small beer compared to the millions that we spend on parks and green spaces in the city. But the regulatory aspect of it, which is all about protecting the public, I think is essential. But I can only really make a value judgment on whether it's a success if we had an incident that showed that having qualified businesses with insurance did give some protection.
Tom's asked that everyone stay in their seats now. The mics should be
Right. Okay. My next one is Joanna Booth, but I don't think Joanna is here because I would recognise her. And then the final question is Jennifer Brewer. And I've just been told by our technical expert behind that if you project, the microphone should pick you up.
All right. I'm referring to the disused playing field at Badex Wood. I thank you very much for the reply that you gave. I would like to ask, could you please describe the process to change the legal status of the field as described in your response, and also describe the council's role in that process so that it can be incorporated into the local nature reserve? So how does, and what is the council's role?
Thank you, Jennifer. So this is the field in Badex Wood area, isn't it? That is currently classified as a playing field, although it's disused. We've got a discussion later on the playing pitch strategy looking forward for the city, and we can pick that up then. I normally say right at the start of this, I forgot to say today, that I answer orally all the questions as far as I can if they're policy judgments. If it's a legal or technical issue, then I might need help from an officer, and I don't know off the top of my head what the legal process is. The relevant officer is in the room. If he's got a quick answer now, he can give it. Otherwise, we'll deal with it when we come to the playing pitch strategy. Guy. Right, so Guy Fishbourne is our head of sport for the city. He's overseen the process for the playing pitch strategy, so he is the nearest we've got to an expert in the room at the moment, but we've also got Rusanaro from legal here as well. So it's about de-designation of a playing field is what you're asking. Can either Rusanaro or Guy answer that now?
I can certainly just kick it off, and it's a good question, and as far as I understand, because it's actually not my domain, but it's a stepped process, which I understand does end up resulting in posting a legal sort of notice of the designation. But before you get to that point, there are a number of steps that need to be undertaken too, as part of that process. But it's outside my domain, which is more so the status of a playing field.
Jennifer, that's the best we can do now. When we come to the playing pitch strategy, if you're still here, or you can look online, we might have more to say about it at that point, because obviously we'll have a bit more time to think. Okay, right. Thank you, everyone. That brings us to the end of the questions. We've got about 5 minutes to go on statements. Because a lot of the statements are about similar topics, I'm going to ask, if you've already asked a question, please don't make your statement, but I'll also try and pick people who have got different topics as well. If necessary, I'll use my chair's discretion to pretend I can't see the time. I don't want anyone to have come here and feel as though they haven't had their say. Right.
Can I just check if Jodie's same has...
Right. In the heat of the moment, literally, I may have accidentally skipped someone and I haven't been ticking. Rebecca Wilson or Jodie Tame, I may have accidentally skipped, but I don't think Jodie's here anyway.
Given that enforcement of the scheme is already expected, how can licensed operators or the public reliably distinguish between licensed and
Can you shout a bit?
She stays in her seat.
Or go back, ironically, back a little bit further. Apparently that's better.
Is that better? Is that better?
Shout.
Okay. Given that enforcement of the scheme is already expected, how can operators or the public reliably distinguish between licensed and unlicensed businesses whilst the public register remains unpublished on the Bristol City Council website?
Thank you, Jodie. That is a very good and important question. So I covered the general issue of when we're going to enforce, first of all, in a previous answer. But transparency is important. It is our intention to publish on the City Council's website everyone who has a licence for operating in our parks, and we're going to do that very shortly. And then that will enable what I said earlier for the public to look at that and see whether the business for which they are paying a membership fee or a participation fee is registered, licensed, qualified and insured. And if they're not on that list, then caveat emptor applies. Right, we'll go on to the statements. Is Owen Barlow here? No. Kieran Chudella, sorry. No. Julia Turner. Julia. Right, we've all got your statement. You can read it if you wish, but if you want to just give a brief summary,
yeah, I'd love
that
to
will also help.
Thank you. So, yeah, I don't see that the parks policy is solving any problems. I didn't see that there were any problems, but now there's some really big problems because dogs are being prioritised over people, because Nordic walkers are no longer able to walk, because Ailey, who was here, is unable to run her yoga classes in St George Park. These are massive losses to our community, and these are just a small fraction of the disruption and the, you know, you're demolishing park culture. So, but you know what? It isn't too late. You can turn this around. Wander into a park. Sit yourself under a tree. Take a deep breath. What do you want to see? What do we want for our city?
Welcoming parks filled with community activity.
What do we want for our city?
Parks that actively welcome people of all ages and all cultures.
What do we want for our city?
Parks that promote and encourage creative ideas and community-minded businesses.
What do we want for our city?
Parks that grow the shoots of wealth equality.
Wander into a park. Sit yourself under a tree. Take a deep breath. You can turn this around. Take a deep breath. You can turn this around. Take a deep breath. You can turn this around. What do we want for our city?
Thank you, Julia. Well, that's a novelty. I hope I haven't set a precedent for the Lord Mayor and all my fellow committee chairs by allowing a performance as opposed to a statement, but thank you.
I hope you have.
Thank you for it, and it demonstrates clearly what you do with your group, and of course I've seen various emails about the bring your own baby to the park group. With statements, we don't engage with the statements that are going to go along, but because this particular group didn't feature in the questions, I'll just say this now to repeat what I said to a question, that where a group feels that they are providing benefit, health benefit, and I know, Julia, you say that your group does for parents and babies, then please have the dialogue with our parks officers. We know about your case, and parks officers are talking to the Director of Public Health about a way forward for you. So please continue that dialogue, and hopefully we'll find a way forward for you very soon. But thank you for making your statement in an innovative way today. Thank you. Right, we are now out of time. I'm just going to go through to make sure that there isn't a statement on a different question. I don't think there is. They're all people who've either been before. I think everyone I've got on my statement list has already asked a question or the topic has come up. If there's anyone in the gallery who desperately wanted to make a statement, then please wave at me now and I will let you do it. Right, the lady in the white hair. Your Kate Spreadbury, sorry.
Up, down. Oh, hang on, that's good.
That sounds optimal.
I'll crouch. I'm representing Bristol Parks Forum and only wanted to speak because I've got a couple of suggestions. So Bristol Parks Forum's really worried, you've heard today, the concerning impacts, people with long-term conditions, older people, disabled people, other marginalised groups. This can't wait for a future review. We need to pause the scheme now and amend the scheme because the licensing scheme can be so much better. At the moment, it's a bit of a blunt instrument, but two things. Numerous local authorities keep the principle of the scheme, i.e. if you're providing activities in parks, you should have a licence, whilst providing a published sliding scale of fees, including free licences or admin fee only for low-cost, not-for-profit groups that provide community benefit. This means not just businesses, but anyone providing activities to the public in Bristol's park must apply for a licence, demonstrate they have undertaken risk assessments, were properly insured and had relevant first aids. This can be really publicly transparent if we do what the London boroughs do and provide all of the licensed people with a brightly coloured lanyard so that public can instantly see which dog walkers, which activity leaders have applied for a licence. So Bristol Parks Forum really urge that and know that Bristol City can and must commit to finding a solution that will restore the access to activities, vital health and wellbeing activities in our communities in a way that's fair and publicly transparent. And now I've got to get out of this position. Thank you.
So, thank you, Kate, and thanks as always to Bristol Parks Forum for everything you do. I notice Les isn't in the public gallery today. He's been a fixture at Len has been a fixture at all of our meetings. Perhaps he's enjoying or not enjoying the warm weather somewhere. Right, I'm going to take one more. I think I did see another hand. Yes, please. And if you could just say who you are, because I'm not sure where we are on the list.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Elizabeth Boora. I'm the youth representative for the Friends of Baydox Wood, and I'm going to be presenting the Friends statement on the disused playing field in Baydox. This site simply needs to be removed from any potential pitch use, taken out of the strategy so that it can be included in the Baydox Wood L&R management plan and incorporated into the rest of Baydox Wood Local Nature Reserve. The council report states that the Baydox Wood recreation site will still be referred to in the data behind this strategy to give a complete picture. It is listed as being out of use. Its removal in future data reviews and subsequent strategies will be advocated for by BCC and decided at the first steering group meeting. This makes no sense. The process has already been undertaken because the recommendation from the Park Service to remove it from the plain pitch strategy was published with the consultation, so its removal has already been advocated for by the BCC as part of this review. To insist on doing it again without any justification for ignoring the Council Park Service recommendation to remove it this time around is a waste of officer and councillors' time at a cost to public funds. To do this again will surely achieve nothing further than a delay to its removal when the site is totally unsuited to modern formal sports usage. The field in which the pitches were sited has not been used or managed for sports use for over 9 years and was therefore formally taken out of plain pitch management by BCC Park Service in 2017, the goalposts removed and the potholes filled in. Friends of Baydoxwood was notified of this by email from Park Service in July 2017. Meanwhile, as long as it remains referenced as a potential plain pitch site, which does not make sense and implies no one has actually been to the site, it prevents the field being brought into the designated Baydoxwood Local Nature Reserve. This is unacceptable, and we cannot understand why the council not just remove the site completely, and if they must reference it historically, then they might say in the strategy that there were low-grade football pitches within Baydoxwood Recreation Field, but these ceased to function as football pitches by 2017. Due to lack of use, they were no longer required. The pitch sites have been discussed for formal sports for so long that it would be totally uneconomic to bring them back into grass use. There are unused sites in the assessment report that are described as poor, and by comparison these pitches are simply non-existent. The site could not be engineered to be the modern-day preferred pitch style of artificial surfaces, floodlighting, etc., because of nature and wildlife concerns. There are at least 2 protected mammal species that use that field. Any lighting would impact the adjacent local nature reserve and designated ancient woodland. In the past 12 months, we have recorded 4 different bat species in Baydoxwood, 3 of them at the recreation field. Baydoxwood is locally important for bat species. The field is already part of the wood, and there seems no reason for it to not be part of the nature reserve too.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And obviously that is linked to the question. We had a guest from a family member earlier, and we'll try and address the issue of how to de-designate a pitch when we come to the playing pitch strategy item. But I think we'll write to the 2 people who've made a question or made a statement about this as well as a follow-up after the meeting with some clarity about what the way forward for that might be once we've adopted the playing pitch strategy. So thank you to everyone who's come along this morning in really difficult conditions and have raised important topics, and we will be discussing a lot of the topics that came up when we come to our item on the parks business licenses shortly. But before we get there, we can now move on to agenda item 7, unless I'm in the hands of colleagues here whether we'd like to take a break now. I'm pretty hot. Right, so we're going to suspend the meeting for 10 minutes, currently by the clock, 20 past 10. So if members and officers could come back by 10:30, then we'll resume with our discussion on community cohesion. Thank you. Right, good morning again, everyone. Welcome back to this meeting of Bristol City Council's Public Health and Communities Policy Committee. After that interval, we're now on to agenda item 7, which is our regular opportunity to discuss community cohesion in our city, something that is now a standing item at every meeting. Shortly, I'll ask Penny German, who is the Council's head of our community service, to give the professional introduction to the report. I'll just add a few remarks of my own to begin with. So this report brings us up to date to where we were at the time that it was written, but our work in community cohesion is ongoing and constant. I and the officers have lots of meetings with each other, but with community groups around the city continually. A huge amount of time is going into making sure that, as far as we're able to, our city is cohesive and safe. But there are particular groups in our city who are in particular need of assurance at the moment. Earlier in the supplementary answer I gave to Councillor Kaz-Self's question on attacks on the LGBT community, I reflected on the fact there are people both in this country and abroad who are seeking to overtly divide us. There are also people who are covertly seeking to divide us as well. So work in this area is becoming ever more complicated, and we all need to be ever more vigilant. In particular, at the moment, though, there are particular minoritized communities in our city who are under particular attack. I refer in particular to the Jewish community in Bristol, a very small, relatively, in religious terms, community in the city, but nonetheless are anxious. So we have spent time with them, with our partners, reassuring members of the Jewish community. Muslims are also under increased attack by some quarters, and we provide assurance as far as we can to them. And I'm due to have a meeting shortly with Bristol's Muslim Leadership Council. The Sikh community have also felt particularly vulnerable recently because of the poor reporting of the trial and conviction as a result of the murder of Henry Novak, which a lot of people will have seen in the media, and the murder of Stephen Ogilvie in Belfast as well. Last night, the Director of Public Health, Christina Gray, and myself went to a meeting in the Rose Green Centre in Eastville that was hosted by Avon and Somerset Constabulary, that was attended by about 40 leading members of the Sikh community in Bristol. That was to provide both police and local authority assurance to them that we were taking their concerns very seriously. I think I can safely say, because it was said in public last night, that Avon and Somerset Constabulary have now set up a particular group of officers whose job it will be to liaise with faith groups in the city, to provide, where necessary, enhanced patrols in particular parts of the city, especially around synagogues, gurdwara and mosques at times of tension, or if the community feel there is a particular threat. And the report refers to various listening exercises that have taken place over the last 6 or 9 months that I've attended all of them, and there is another one next week hosted by Ambition Lawrence Weston. That's a co-production in between our communities team and the One City Homes and Communities Board. All of the listening that we've been doing, and there has been a lot of intensive listening and collating what people have been saying to us, is going to lead to a co-produced document to come to this committee in November that will be our We Are Bristol community cohesion strategy. So that's where we're leading to as a committee. there are going to be various more opportunities for committee members other than the in public sessions that we have here. We are proposing to have a workshop for committee members to discuss items in a safe space, and my fellow committee chairs and the leader of the council will have an opportunity to contribute too. Right, Penny, would you like to give the professional introduction to the report, please?
Thank you very much. So on the 16th of January 2026, the committee received a briefing on the Reflections on Community Cohesion in Bristol report and how this is informing the strategic approach. And since then, we've been providing regular updates. As the Chair has said, we continue to work on two levels. Acute response, which is focused on community safety and on the development of our kind of longer-term plan. And both of those things that we do with community and voluntary sector and statutory partners. So this is an update on activity since the last committee. Through April and May, we held 3 conversations with young people, hosted by the leader and Councillor Williams, chair of this committee, in Easton, Southmead and Hartcliffe. These conversations were co-designed with and led by young people between the ages of 12 and 24 in partnership with local community and voluntary sector organisations, the Youth Council and the City Council's Youth and Play team. 62 young people attended, and the focus was, of course, on the issues that are important to them. Key points that came from those conversations were about the importance of local spaces such as youth centres and outside spaces such as parks where young people can safely meet other young people from their local area, but also young people from other areas. The importance of trusted adults as allies and helping young people to feel safe. A recognition that they are seeking a recognition that where they live, the postcodes and the place names do shape their everyday reality and can cause fear and division. And there are generational and entrenched rivalries in some communities. Knife crime is a concern, and affordable travel was raised as an important issue in terms of safely moving around the city. The free summer bus travel was praised, and there was a call for discounted travel to be extended to under 18s. Events that involve sport, music, food, opportunities for connection and celebration. So that's a summary of the feedback from young people, and that will be fed into the strategic work. So on to the wider work. So the City Council received some funding following the August 2024 riots, and that's enabled some really great work. And that's concluding. The Appendix A sets out some of the work that's happened. So just to mention, Black South West Network have concluded their work to support the recovery and resilience of black and minoritized community leaders who were disproportionately impacted by the disorder that took place in August 2024. VOSCA and SARI, Stand Against Racism and Inequality, have concluded their series of community forum workshops, and that's led to a resource pack which is available on VOSCA's website. SARI concluded a series of workshops that they've produced in collaboration with the City Council and other key partners, which is supporting contingency planning, guidance and protocols for mosques and other faith spaces, and this will be published and circulated in June. Building on the work that Ambition Lawrence Weston have done in relation to a listening exercise on working class experience and identity and perceptions of community cohesion, Hartcliffe and Withywood Community Partnership and Knoll West Health Park have been awarded £5,000 to carry out a similar piece of work in South Bristol. We mentioned in our last update the event, One City, Many Communities event that took place here in March. And since then, work has been underway to develop a communications plan. We recognise just how important that is. And the feedback from the One City, Many Communities event is set out in Appendix A. So as the Chair has said, we continue with the acute response. We're really mindful, the tension monitoring group that meets weekly is really mindful of the increased fear and concern. We recognise the importance of communicating well all of the work that's going on to support communities and to keep people safe. So we've boosted the resource that's going into the regular community safety bulletin because it's really important that people can rely on this for information. We're continually working with partners to understand what's happening across the city, including on social media platforms. So we welcome insight and feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, Penny. There's now opportunity for fellow members to ask questions or make reflections. Ellie?
Thank you. I think this is a really important piece of work, and it's good that this committee is seeing these reports. There were two comments really I wanted to make. One was the role of the community development team in this work, which I think is really important. Certainly where we are in Bedminster, where the local development officer is organising a community feast and other things to really support this and sort of back up what else is happening. We've got fewer organisations doing that, but he's really driving that, and I think the work that they do across the city should be recognised. And the other thing which Stephen's heart will sink, so we still have flags in our ward, and whenever people ask me about what's being done, I talk about this behind-the-scenes work, which is obviously really important, but the flags are still a visual reminder of those divisions within our community. So I would just want to reiterate that this is all really good, but we've got to be mindful of when people come into the city and see swathes of flags, this becomes less important, is less significant for them than that, which is really sad and frustrating, but I think that's something that we need to acknowledge.
Thanks, Ellie. I'll let Penny deal with the first part of your question shortly, but I'll deal with the issue of flags because there has been some willful misreporting of a statement that Tony Dyer, the council leader, which I had a hand in as well, made about the World Cup that is taking place at the moment. It's been reported in some disreputable quarters of the media that Bristol City Council has banned the display of the St George's flag, which is complete, choose your word, nonsense. We've emphatically not said that. What we have reiterated is the position we've had all along over the last 9 months or so that flags spontaneously started appearing on lampposts and other public property, that people should not unilaterally decide to affix any emblem, flag, whatever nationality it is, to lampposts in the city or to railings of public buildings. That remains our position. Of course, we are delighted to see if people want to put the St George's flag or the Scottish flag, for that matter, or indeed any other flag. We are a global city. There'll be people in this city who will be delighted that Ivory Coast won last night, or this is showing I'm not a true football follower, whoever else. Ecuador beat Germany, I think. Thank you. I was going to ask my keen sporting colleagues to bail me out there, but I remembered just in time in the heat last night, I did see that Ecuador beat Germany. There'll be people from all over the world living in our city, and of course it's wonderful to see a display of flags in people's windows, gardens, whatever. We absolutely love that as a city, to reflect the fact that we do have people who are proud to support their England team, their Scottish team, unfortunately not the Welsh team, and we don't want to discourage that at all. But please, please, please do not put flags on lampposts. Where flags are on lampposts, which is what you were actually asking about, Ellie, our position remains the same. We have identified sensitive locations around the city where we are prioritising the taking down of flags that should not be on lampposts. There are other locations in the city, particular highways, or where there are health and safety concerns, or where people have asked for us to take down flags, and they are being taken down systematically. There have been operational issues. Obviously, this work is done by council contractors. We are aware, obviously, that this is a politically and emotionally charged atmosphere in which we are asking other people to follow our instructions, and we have to make sure that they are protected while doing so. So measures have had to be put in place to make sure that the council's highways contractors are safeguarded, because you'll just be aware from the media that there have been confrontational situations and intimidation in various parts of the country of council contractors who are taking flags down. So that's a key consideration for us as well. But the administration's position remains flags should not be displayed from public lampposts. We're prioritising sensitive locations, for instance, outside the youth zone in South Bristol. We're taking down flags, though, ironically, some of us might have a different view about this. The European Union flag has been displayed at that location as well. But the policy remains the same. No flags, please, on any public lampposts. And over time, I would expect to see a reduction in the flags that are being displayed without permission on public property. Right, Penny, are you able to deal with the first parts of Ellie's question?
I think that was extending your appreciation of the community development team and the work that they're doing in Bedminster. So thank you very much for that. And we're really fortunate in Bristol to have a community development team. I would just take this opportunity to extend my thanks to all of them who do such important, difficult work across the city. So thank you.
Thanks. The next person I've got is Lisa.
Thank you. Thanks for that report. It's been really good to see those community conversations taking place with young people across our city. Really important at the moment. And seeing that they're specifically kind of mentioning the importance of youth centres to offer safe spaces and resources. I was lucky enough to be at the official opening of 224 Youth Zone on Saturday, which offers just that. So it was really great to see that finally open and be able to offer that to young people in South Bristol. It was absolutely full of young people and their families. It was such a great celebration. And I think this is going to be a really important part of helping with community cohesion in South Bristol. And that's alongside the new Young Futures Hub in St Paul's, which is part of the government's plan to rebuild youth services. So I just want to acknowledge that work is happening in that space, and we really need to ensure that we make the most of these opportunities that connect young people and communities. I think they're a really important part of that community cohesion work. So it was just an acknowledgement of that, really. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. And next I've got Ed and then Cara.
Thanks very much, Stephen. And thank you to Penny and the team for bringing forward the Community Cohesion report. Now, I've been quite critical of the first couple of leads because it's felt, I think, particularly as we've got started with this, it's felt a bit like there's been a lot of talk and not a lot of action. And I'm going to U-turn here and say, give real praise to this version of the report and feel like that this is really turning a corner, because I think what this does really well is it centres the stories of those people that have benefited from the services, from the community groups that are providing, these vital interventions to try and assist with community cohesion at such a tough time as this. I was really moved actually by the, those of you looking at the papers on page 24, the anecdote from the Dovetail Orchestra and the case study of the Syrian refugee who, just to summarise for those who haven't read it, who said goodbye to his family and friends during the Arab Spring in 2011, came over and settled in Bristol, and found that being part of the Dovetail Orchestra, being involved in music, had a major role in their healing process, and being able to work, being able to create music with others over the time that they've been here has been such a vital part of their well-being as a music undergraduate myself, so I used to compose for a living long before my political life. It's so heartwarming to see stories like that. And I also want to take the opportunity to praise a couple of other things that have happened in my ward recently that I think link well to community cohesion. Firstly, this links back slightly to flags. So a community group called the Brick Project, have a community interest company. They've been involved in a community painting project, painting a series of brick walls on Gadshill Road. So this is just off the Fish Ponds Road near Eastfall Park, where members of the public can come along and paint an individual brick and say something about themselves, their identity. Some put their names on it, some say something about themselves. Quite a lot of put on flags. I've noticed quite a few of the minnow teams in the World Cup of, I think both Curacao and Cape Verde get a bit of representation there. So that was fantastic to see. But also, I wanted to give some praise to a community event that myself and Cara were involved with at the start of the month with Avon and Somerset Police, with the neighbourhood policing team and one of the local inspectors. So you may recall in the last meeting we had the superintendent here from the police, and I was quite critical that there hadn't been a community event following the cycle by shooting on Speedwell Road in early April. I'm pleased to say following that meeting, an event did then take place. The police came out in numbers to provide the community with useful information. The inspector came along and gave the community an update on the case. But more importantly, it was a chance for the 30 or 40 residents who could make it along to Speedwell Chapel to have their say on local police, crime, community, antisocial behaviour issues, which I think makes a real difference when people's voices get heard in that kind of way. They get to connect with the public representatives and with the police. And it was a reminder for me that kind of engagement can go a heck of a long way. So, sharing with praise, hopefully, today. But thank you so much for bringing this report.
Thank you, Ed. And just to follow up what you said about the story that you found particularly heartwarming, I've been saying to colleagues, I think I've said openly here as well, that we need to get much better at storytelling about positive things that are going on in our communities right across the city. Some of it will be myth-busting, some of it will be putting the facts on the table, but a lot of it is just reiterating fantastic things that go on all around Bristol all of the time. Some of it the council funds or facilitates or convenes. A lot of it is done by other groups on a voluntary basis, and we do need to get much better at telling those positive stories about good community relations in the city, and that's going to be a key part of the We Are Bristol community cohesion strategy that's going to come to committee in November. We do now have a more dedicated resource inside the council to help us with that storytelling, and Becca is already making a great impact in that area. So that was Ed. So I've got Cara next.
Thank you, Stephen. I, similarly to Ed, actually was going to say similar things. It was really useful to read about case studies of actual work and the movement that's happening in the city around these projects. So, and I know I was quite critical at the last meeting about sort of a number of different organisations who are kind of faceless and we don't understand what they're doing. So this it feels like we're sort of somewhere, this has come to the other end of the extreme, where we really get to see the work that's happening. But I was curious about whether we know what this sense of need is of this kind of work versus the proportion of action that we have. I'm mindful that the Bristol Impact Fund, for example, is in real terms been cut, and lots of organisations that are relying on this kind of work are struggling. So do we have a sense of need versus provision?
I think I'd find it hard to kind of quantify that and put it in numbers, but what we know about Bristol is that there's an awful lot happening, but there's also always an awful lot more that could be happening. We know that, and we've talked about this in previous reports, we know that the community and voluntary sector are facing a particularly difficult time because of our financial context. I think, the Reflections of Community Cohesion report really amplifies those voices of people who find these things harder to do, face more barriers, and that's where we're trying to, the purpose of the MHCL, the Community Recovery Fund grant, was to try and really reach those communities. We've got some work to do to think about how we, if we can find a way as a whole city of trying to find some resource to continue that work.
And yeah, I'm also aware that there's a sort of a national context also impacting hate crimes and tension. So I realise it's not necessarily controllable within Bristol. So we can't. I'm thinking of one of the public statement questions, which is talking about monitoring of what success rates, but. You can be bringing down community tension, but there can be other factors beyond the city's control increasing community tension, such as national politicians causing, making racist statements effectively. So I guess it's not something we can necessarily monitor for because you don't know what all the driving factors, contributing factors are to community tension.
Yeah, I mean, this is as I've said, this is a crowded, complex field that is getting more and more complex. The City Council is a key player in the city, but a lot of what happens on the ground is determined by the actions of people elsewhere, and elsewhere could be among our own national politicians. Farage, just name him for what he is, who's in the business of engendering division and mistrust. But they could be in Tehran, they could be in Moscow, they could be anywhere around the world who are overtly doing it, and as I said earlier, covertly doing it as well. I mean, there are lots of... And AI is already making this much more difficult. I didn't see any other hands. Carol?
Thank you. I just want to say thank you very much, Penny, for the work that you are doing. It's an excellent report. And it's more of a statement, really, than a question, so you can relax. But I just also wanted to say that this is an issue for all wards across Bristol and not just a few, so it concerns us all. It's really important work. And reading the report, the numbers have increased dramatically in some areas in particular, and we are seeing an increase in confidence to report and share that information, and I take that on board, and I also recognise that as a positive. However, as a black woman myself, I also have to highlight the fact that there are manifest increases in these hate incidences, stroke life experiences for people from minority groups. And so this work is in particular very important as an ongoing measure for us all across all of Bristol. And I just really wanted to raise that as a cautious, celebratory concern. So whilst I acknowledge that there's some great work happening, and there really, really is, and we've heard that and seen that, we were also seeing the figures go up dramatically. But I don't think those figures are just going up because people are feeling confident to report, although I do think that's part of what we're seeing, and that's great. I myself can speak from experience that in the last 2 years, I definitely have had so many more experiences than I had in the previous decades back into my childhood. So I can speak to it from a personal point of view, but when I speak to others, it's exactly the same. So thank you, and please do continue with the work. It's much needed. Thanks,
Carol, and thanks for sharing the lived experience, as we call it, but the real personal viciousness of racism, however is it expressed. And I'm thinking back now to the meeting that Christina and I were at last night with the Sikh community, and a couple of, and it was two of the women who were at the meeting, brought up the subject of children in the city's schools, how incidents of bullying and racial abuse have arisen, and a Sikh child being spat at, and so on. And just to as I said last night at the meeting, every school has a duty to make sure that every child goes to school in a safe environment to learn. Every school, both the head teacher, a specific person on the governing body, must be responsible for the school's anti-bullying policies. That isn't just a generic policy that reflects the protected characteristics of children, whether it's abuse on the grounds of race or religion or sexuality. This is something I was very heavily involved with in my first term as an MP, getting the bullying guidelines for schools rewritten by Ed Balls, who was the Children's Schools and Families Secretary at the time, to make sure that every school dealt with bullying in a very serious way. I mentioned earlier this field is more crowded generally, but of course in the education field it's become more complex since then as well, with academy chains and so on. So I know Vic Verma, who's the Director of Schools Education for the Council, is working with schools where there are particular concentrations of Sikh children, but we need a whole council approach to this. And I would say to Christina, and you can comment now as well, that we need to make sure that our other committees are looking at this, particularly where there is a safeguarding concern or just a bullying concern. And bullying is a term we use that if we were adults, we would call it abuse, violence and hatred, whereas we use that innocuous term of bullying when it comes to children. Children could be affected for life as a result of being bullied in school. So we want a whole council approach to this, even though we don't directly control most of the city schools anymore. Christina, do you want to add a reflection to that?
I just wanted to thank the committee actually for your support, and Carol, you summed it up there. I think this is going to be one of our biggest challenges for the city, and what you can hear coming through in the reports is the importance of the grassroots work with our communities to strengthen connection. That is the biggest inoculation against hatred that we can invest in. At the other end of the spectrum, we need to address the rising hate crimes, which are criminal acts being perpetuated within a sort of national and international context. So the work that Penny's team is doing is hugely important. We need to invest in that. We need to invest in our voluntary sector. We need to invest in our communities, because that is our biggest protection and our biggest resource. And at the same time, we need to continue to be working with our police colleagues and community safety partners on ensuring that we have got that the city is safe. And Stephen referred to the new police unit, which is being focused on Bristol. They're called Hercules, and Chris Green is the police inspector who's leading that. He's been in the city a long time, grew up in Lockleys, has worked in Lockleys, very committed to the city. Fantastic group of officers that we met last night. Very, very moving why they've volunteered to come into these roles. To learn as well as serve. They're not coming in knowing everything about all communities, but they were really coming in very open, wanting to learn, and that work has got the support at the highest level in Avon and Somerset Police and the Home Office and the government, I believe. So that's a really fantastic thing, and perhaps at some point we'll have more on that work. Deepak, who you know, Deepak Kent, who came last time, is our neighbourhood lead, police lead, and he's working very closely with that police unit. So I think, thank you, committee. Please keep asking, keep challenging, keep supporting. The cross-party support in this is really important. Any divisions that anybody can make will hurt us all. So thank you for your graciousness and leadership in that.
Thank you. Christine, just following up from what we both said about this new police group, which I think is about 10 officers who are dedicated to places of worship safety and religious groups safety as well. Sadly, we live in an age where people have to think about whether children can go to school safely or whether people can worship safely as well. One of the points that came out of the discussion last night is that some parts of the public sector do have to go through cultural competence awareness and training, and a lot of the officers were very open about the fact that they didn't know much about Sikh culture. None of them had ever been to a Gurdwara, and exactly the same, Councillor Malik, will apply to mosques as well. So do expect an approach from the police to visit perhaps your chair of one of Bristol's leading mosques on St Mark's Road, and I think this is a great initiative by Avon, Somerset, Constabulary, but it'll only work if all of our places of worship and religious groups in the city work with the police in order to try and increase confidence that people can attend school, go about their daily lives or worship in safety.
I just want to make a closing statement, which is the importance of collective responsibility and also allyship as well, and it's the perfect area for cross-party work.
Yeah, I entirely endorse that, Carol, that being a standard bearer for your community is something that is important for politicians to be overt that you are, as well as a councillor, you are a mosque leader, to be as well as being a councillor, to being one leading lady. Black Afro-Caribbean members in Bristol, that you are a gay politician is important, but all of us need allies. This is where we need to be united amongst the parties who are currently represented on the council. And as a representative of a minority community, while I've stood up for my community's rights, I am very well aware that the advances in gay rights, for instance, have only happened because of allies. So allyship is incredibly important. Thank you. I think that's a very good note to end. This is our regular standing item, so this is just a report to note, and we'll come back to it at our next meeting. So we now go on to agenda item 8. This will be a very short item, after which we'll have our next break. And it's just the annual business report that every committee has to do. This is simply to confirm the membership. But Bronwyn, do you want to introduce it?
Hello, everyone. Yes, I'm Bronwyn Falconer, the Policy Committee Officer. As Stephen said, this is largely a housekeeping piece to confirm the agreements made at full council on 12th of May. So the key points we're reiterating here are the membership of the committee, the appointment of Stephen Williams and Carol Johnson as chair and vice chair, to note the terms of reference and the meeting dates for the following year. Excuse me. The only non-standard piece I'd like to draw your attention to is the terms of reference. The terms of reference in the report are correct. There is an error in the Constitution in which mental health services is also listed as a terms of reference. That is being corrected, but the terms of reference as listed here are correct. Again, this is an information report for noting. Happy to take any questions, but just confirming those arrangements for the committee. Thank you,
Bronwyn, and this report also had the meeting dates for this municipal year. Just in case anyone has missed this, we've decided not to have an August committee meeting later this year, and we have had them in the last 2 years, so we cancelled last year's, and have moved what was a publicised August meeting to September the 11th. That has a knock-on consequence for the scheduled meeting in October, which we're looking at whether we need to adjust that date as well. But we'll make that decision very quickly. Do any members wish to comment on this report? Abdul.
Just really want to table a vote of thanks to Democratic Services for reaching out to know about the religious holidays and making provision for that. I'm still stuck with the Friday, but there's not much we can do about that at the moment. Thanks.
Yes, thanks, Abdul. I'd like to echo that. Thanks as well. Yes, we are still stuck with Fridays, but I think if we decided the council wasn't going to operate on a Friday, lots of people have something to say about it. Okay, so we just note this report. Everyone happy to note it? So our next item is agenda item 9 on Parks business. I did say at the outset we're going to have regular breaks during this meeting. So we will take a break now. We normally do take a break at this point in the committee anyway. So can we come back at 11:30? The next item is likely to have a long discussion, so I didn't want to carry on until the end of it because I think that will make us all very uncomfortable. So it's 11:15 at the moment, so I'm going to adjourn the meeting until 11:30. So if all members could be back promptly. Right, good morning again, everybody. Welcome back to this meeting of Bristol City Council's Public Health and Communities Policy Committee. After our interval, we're now on to agenda item 9, which is consideration of the Parks Business Licensing Scheme. And it's an update on where we are on this licensing scheme. I probably don't need to say too much about it because we had a lot of comments about it in the public forum earlier, and in the course of answering the questions, I clarified a lot of points, at least from my perspective. This is an issue that we know has been controversial in some quarters and has garnered quite a lot of attention. But I would like to point out that a lot of commercial businesses that are operating in our parks, over 80 of them, have now applied for a licence and have received that licence and will have paid their fee going forward. But there are still issues of concern that we need to address, and that's why we've got this report in front of us. I'll just alert everyone now that there is an amendment which we will consider shortly that's going to be proposed by Councillor Fraser. An amendment was also tabled by Councillor Johnson, which the procedural advice that I've received was that if the first amendment, which will be clear shortly, that Councillor Fraser is going to propose is passed, then there's no need for us to consider the second amendment. But during the break, I've had a conversation with Councillor Johnson and have agreed a form of words that the Labour group, if they wish to, can put forward for a vote. But we'll get to that when we get to it. Right, I'm joined up the front by Patsy Mellor, who's the Director of Management of Place for the City Council. She oversees a vast empire that has highways, parks, libraries and a whole lot of other things in it. And to her right is Richard Fletcher, who is the head of our Parks Service. We also have on the benches Greg Want, who is our Parks Commercial Manager, and he's dealt with many of the operational aspects of this scheme. Patsy will shortly introduce the report, and then as we go through our discussions, if there are questions from members, Richard or Greg or Patsy can answer them. So Patsy, do you want to introduce the report first?
Thanks, Chair. This paper just seeks to update the committee on the progress of the licensing scheme since it was agreed in 2018, take you through the implementation and phased approach that's been taken and to where we are now to date. I'm going to hand over to Richard Fletcher, who will take us through the details of the report.
Thanks, Patsy. So the Parks Business Licensing Scheme was developed to manage commercial activity and regulate commercial activity in parks and green spaces with an aim to make sure that they're operating in a safe, fair and coordinated way alongside the wider use of public parks by the general public. Online, we have stated that our business licensing should act to increase public safety by our monitoring people who are running commercial businesses in parks, helps protect our shared spaces, improves the organisation of activities. It does this by us being more aware of what type of activities and how many activities take place in parks, may support the maintenance of our parks and green spaces going forward should the level of income generated from the scheme mean that it creates a surplus and, as said, ensures compliance with parks bylaws. The report does not include the Downs. The Downs is regulated and managed separately by the Downs Committee, and the Downs Committee has its own approach to licensing businesses on the Downs, and that information is available on the Council's website. The origins of this are back in 2017-2018. There was a citywide consultation on a number of savings applied to the Park Service over several years. I think they amounted to just shy of about £3 million. There was a public consultation at the end of 2017 and into 2018, and we got a lot of responses for that, 2,600. And one of the proposals was to generate income as Stephen has set out earlier, from parks and green spaces, including the introduction of fees and charges for commercial activities. 55% of respondents expressed support for that particular proposal, with 34% in opposition. And then subsequently, in May of 2018, the then Cabinet approved the introduction of new competitive fees and charges for any business operating from a park or green space. This includes fitness instructors, dog walkers, balloon flights, and any other businesses using public open spaces. Following that decision, we undertook a phased approach to implementing licences. The first phase was prepared to be ballooning and fitness activities, and dog walking and other activities in phase 2. Progress was interrupted, so in terms of phase 1, we only began to implement the ballooning licences. So therefore, anyone operating a hot air balloon licence in a park or green space has been subject to a licence since that time. But the COVID pandemic and other reasons paused the phase 2 approach and the remainder of phase 1, which was fitness activities. So the scheme has never really been formally withdrawn. Instead, balloon licences have gone forward, and it is phase 2 that we are now implementing. Phase 2 proposals were reviewed through chair and deputy chair briefings, so they now include the rollout of fitness providers and professional dog walkers and other outdoor activities for which a charge is made. You don't need a licence, as has been set out a little bit earlier, if you are not charging for a service, or if you're carrying out activities such as playing informal sports with friends or family, exercising alone such as jogging or solo yoga, taking part in free-to-join groups such as park run, part of a formal sports club that has an existing agreement with the council, or walking your own dog. The Chair of Public Health and Communities, Councillor Williams, announced the scheme in September 2025, September last year, but following a response from those affected by the licence, there was a pause initiated. And during that period, we encouraged operators to still submit applications so that we could gather information about their businesses and potentially seek to modify the scheme as a result of what we learned. We received 61 feedback responses through that process, and during that time, 13 applications were received. In response to the feedback that we received, we implemented a number of changes. So we removed the per park and per operator fee model. We introduced banded fees, which are based on number of parks used. We introduced a 50% small business discount for qualifying applicants. So a 50% discount is available to Bristol-based small businesses with an annual turnover under £25,000 and who operate in 7 or less Bristol parks and green spaces. We separated out fee structures for professional dog walking services and other activities. We revised and reduced the overall fee levels following a further benchmarking exercise, which is set out in Appendix A, and we aligned with professional guidance in relation to dog walking group size, which I'll refer to later. That revised fee structure and licensing approach was further announced in January 2026 and has been implemented from the 1st of April this year. We've had a high level of engagement to that process. At the time of authoring the report, 87 applications have been received, 73 approved, with a small number awaiting further review or submission. 69 relate to dog-related activities. Most applicants qualify for small business discount, and most have a turnover range between £10,000 and £25,000. The total turnover from all of the applications put together is somewhere between 1.1 million and 2.3 million. And at the point of writing the report, the estimated licence income in total is around £22,350. While the scheme was initially proposed, as Councillor Williams mentioned earlier, as an income-generating measure with £55,000 removed from the Parks budget back in 2018, the scheme with those figures is likely to offset the costs of administering the scheme rather than bringing in particularly a level of income as originally anticipated. Table 1 sets out that the vast bulk of licences come in very few spaces, perhaps not unsurprisingly given their scale, that some of the city's largest parks and green spaces are most visited. Following the re-announcements of the scheme in April, the level of feedback has significantly reduced and tended to focus on a couple of aspects. Firstly, in relation to dog walking, the restriction to a maximum of 4 dogs being walked at any time was a particular response comment, but we have followed professional dog walkers' guidelines published by the Canine and Feline Sector Group and endorsed by the Dogs Trust, RSPCA and Pet Industry Foundation. That publication sets out guidelines that dog walkers should conform to, ensuring standards of welfare for the dog, respect for the environment and peace of mind for the owner. So that restriction enables the council to manage group size, intensity of use and interactions between park users. The other number of comments focused on another area of the licensing, which was the separation of the fee structure of commercial dog walking from remaining licenses, which have been separately developed following benchmarking. Dog walking typically involves small client numbers, whereas other activities are generally delivered less frequently, but can accommodate larger groups within a single session. In other words, the earning potential outside of dog walking is higher. So the current scheme has been implemented. We have not collected fees from anyone who has been applied and given a licence. Is that correct?
There's been some invoices going out. We've been kind of proceeding on the whole thing as we've been going along to it. We have collected some payments for those who have been issued, but we haven't been chasing any of the debt behind it. So the invoices have gone out, but we haven't necessarily followed up and collected on it where we needed to.
Okay, thanks, Greg. So the scheme will enable us to maintain a consistent and enforceable framework for managing commercial activity. We will still gather feedback, again, as Councillor Williams set out previously, on how the scheme operates and any impacts, and still further consider any revisions at a later date. The take-up of the scheme and the number of people interested and the applications that we received do show that there's a lot of positive engagement with it. Alternative options that were considered were to discontinue it, but we don't get the benefits that we've been seeking in terms of regulating commercial activity in parks, and pausing the scheme pending further review. The same thing applies. Also, the report sets out the potential risk of us identifying that there are health and safety management issues and risk assessment issues related to commercial activity in parks, which we will not be regulating should we pause it. So the officer recommendation, noting in the papers 2 amendments put forward, that the committee notes the details of the report.
Thank you, Richard. Just to sort of summarise all of that, because this has been long running, going right back into the previous administration. But while this administration has been in place, lots of tweaks have been made to the scheme by me under the delegated authority I have as a committee chair, and I've said consistently throughout that we are open to making further tweaks depending on the evidence that we receive from people, because as one of the statements, I think it says we want our parks to be welcoming places for everyone and accessible for everyone. What I would emphasise, we also want them to be safe places for everyone. So it is right that we have regulation in place around commercial dog walking and other commercial activities in our parks as well. One thing Richard didn't say, and Greg didn't say, was that Bristol City Council is not alone in doing this. We might have been an outlier back in 2018 when the original cabinet decision was made, but where we are now, all of our neighbours, South Gloucestershire, Bath, North East Somerset, North Somerset, Somerset Unitary, other councils right across England and London boroughs, and Hampstead Heath, which is the equivalent of the Downs and having its own queer arrangements for administration,
So if at present, before the licensing scheme came in, you could set up I'll just pick yoga because use that as an example, a yoga business, charge your clients and run a class however many times per week. But there's no checks to see if that's a properly qualified person. They have their insurance in place, they have the training that's required. In the licensing scheme, we are required to check that, so that when someone does come along, wants to find a yoga class in a park, they can go on our website, check which ones have been licensed, and be assured that they have got the required qualifications, they have got their own insurance in place, and that they're safe to go with that instructor. And as Richard rightly says, if the bylaws only apply to people who are charging a fee.
Lisa next, and then Ellie.
Thank you. And I also just want to say thank you to all of the groups that came here today in the heat, the amazing singing, and in particular to the babies who made this the cutest committee I've been to so far. And it was really helpful to have them all talk about the impact that the licensing scheme has had on parts of our park culture and some of the vital activities that take place in our parks. And I do think there's something to be said on the timing of this decision when so many in our city are dealing with a cost of living crisis. The consultation that this scheme is based on was done in 2018, a very different social context. Despite operating under austerity, the previous cabinet member chose repeatedly not to take this scheme forward. So this really has been a choice by this administration, and I think that needs to be made clear. In the equality impact assessment, it says that there is no disproportionate impact on older people, but I think from what we've heard today from some of our walking groups that maybe there could be. So I'm wondering how that conclusion was reached as part of that equality impact assessment, and who did you speak to?
I could talk to the equalities impact assessment question. So the equalities impact was based on the provision of actually charging the businesses side of it. So the way it looked at it was more about the impact on the businesses rather than necessarily disproportionate impact on different protected characteristics. It noted that there were some knock-on effects that could occur from it, but it wasn't necessarily saying that this specific scheme itself would cause that from happening, as there is other opportunities out there, and it wasn't necessarily prohibiting access to these things. It was just a charge towards making the license available to them. So it's not saying that there is a disproportionate impact on the knock-on effects. It's saying that the effect of bringing in this license scheme and the charge of the license scheme itself doesn't have a disproportionate effect because it's not blocking access.
Ellie, next.
Thank you. I just want to reiterate Lisa's comments about babies and the public gallery. It's going to be very... I think next time I sub on here, I might not get the same experience, which should be sad. I wanted to get a bit of clarity, particularly given a conversation that happened earlier in public gallery and some of the things you said, Stephen, about what we mean by commercial. So there was mention earlier of non-profit organisations and whether they would need a licence or not. I have a non-profit organisation. I do charge tickets. That's how it sustains itself. It doesn't make a profit. So I just wanted to be really clear that when we talk about commercial, we are saying anything that charges, because the status of the organisation that charges hasn't been factored into this policy as far as I can tell.
If I can start that, as someone who spent 17 years before I became a politician in 2005, working as a tax consultant and working with multi-billion-pound businesses, but also very micro businesses, owner-managed businesses in Bristol as well, to help with some of the language. An organisation can be commercial, charities can be commercial, but they have a different imperative. The imperative of a charity is to provide public benefit. A business is to provide commercial return for the owner of that business. So that's the initial distinction. if a charity was providing Nordic walking services or yoga classes in our parks, and there was no commercial benefit to the people who operate that service because they have a charitable purpose, then they would fall outside the scope of this license scheme. If they're not a charity and they are a commercial venture charging a fee per class, or they have a membership scheme, and research that Greg and other officers have done, and I've actually looked myself as well, quite a lot of the organisations that have been mentioned in the media have websites that show membership schemes and the potential income that is being received by them, then they are being run with a commercial imperative. As to whether they're profit-making, that's an accounting adjustment. What I do not want our officers to get into, we are not a subset of HMRC or Companies House. It is not for us to adjudicate on whether a business is successful and therefore making a profit, or to look at the deductions that might be made from the turnover in order to arrive at that profit. The license fees that are currently in operation are modest business expenses in most cases, but they would be tax deductible. So they're deducted from the profit before tax that the business will be made. So we need to look at what is the gross value of the deduction, and then deduct the income tax or the corporation tax from that as well. So the actual impact on a business is less than what quite a lot of people are saying. The fees do include VAT. VAT is recoverable by businesses. So there's a lot of mythology about this. Hopefully that demystifies some of it, but I see you've got a follow-up question.
Yeah, sorry. So I think there's two different issues here. One is whether an organisation is or a business is making a profit, which is one thing, and another is whether something is registered as a non-profit organisation. So the organisation that I run is Storytale Festival. It's registered as a CIC. It can't make a profit. So even if we got into a point where we were generating lots of income, we would have to reinvest that. That couldn't be counted as profit. That's what I'm trying to get at.
So, witness some cogitation there. A community interest company, yes, that doesn't have a profit motive of a commercial return to the shareholders, trustees, directors, whatever the corporate structure would be, and that is analogous to charitable operations, but isn't identical. But that is probably an example of what I've been saying consistently, where there is a good case for an organisation demonstrating to us that they are providing public benefit, albeit not as a charity, then we will look sympathetically at what they're doing. But we did have this in mind when Patsy, Richard, Greg and I were going through this scheme 6 or 9 months ago. Now, trying to foresee what all of these situations might be, but knowing we wouldn't get it exactly right. And that's where we are at the moment. So we've got a situation where 80-odd businesses have applied for and will get a license. There are a small number of businesses who have residual concerns, and we're trying to see how we can address those, both if their income is smaller than 25,000, which we thought when we struck it was a reasonable level of small turnover. It's way below the small business as company law would categorise it. But we are open to looking at lower thresholds, and I think we may well be coming on to a discussion about that in due course. But even if after that there are businesses that feel that what they do is really not commercial, but they're not a charity, then that's where we need to have a detailed conversation with them. And we want to have those conversations. We do want people who are operating in our parks where the public appreciate the business activity, the service that's provided to continue. This is not meant to be an onerous scheme. It's a public protection scheme with a very modest level of license fees. Thank you.
Thank you, that's helpful. So CRCs and CIOs have to have public benefit aims, so that sounds like it would fall into that.
Just to add, I think you said earlier, Stephen, that we just encourage people to apply for licences if they're unclear, and then we'll manage it that way.
Does that mean they have to pay the £50 to apply for the licence?
I'll answer that one. No, the application fee is only on a successful application, so it's only after it's gone through the full process before that is charged.
There is no financial barrier or reputational barrier or any barrier at all to people having those conversations. Let's say it again, please, please, please talk to our officers and we will issue a license or we'll come to some other arrangement if appropriate. And there have been people who have come forward and we said, we don't need a license. I mean, I did that in public. It was either at the last meeting or the meeting before, where the gentleman, Luke, who I've seen several times since, who runs his walking tours of Bristol city centre every day from outside the cathedral, and I've done an advert for him, does walk through College Green, Queen Square and Castle Park, but they're completely incidental to his business. I mean, he's walking around other parts of Bristol as well. Does not need a licence. So we are happy to say, depending on the merits of a particular situation, that you may not need a licence or the licence fee might be covered in another way. Have we exhausted the... We haven't. Abdul?
Chair, obviously we're going to go to our fantastic amendment that Ed's going to propose in a minute. But I, as an advocate for small businesses, I think it's really important to look at the effect on sole traders, micro businesses, but also women-led businesses in this case. And I think if you, I don't know if we have these figures, but of the people that have applied for licenses, it'd be really interesting to see how many of them are run by women and the disproportionate effect of license costs on
I think Greg might be able to answer that, but I have seen in lots of correspondence I've seen about this, quite a lot of the dog walkers are women-led businesses.
I would say anecdotally, yes. It's not something that we collect about the sex of the person who's applied. It's not something that we're collecting actively. I think if you look at the responses we've had from people, I would probably agree that the majority of people who have said that are women. But it's not something I would want to stand up and say categorically one way or the other. It's a case of being the applications we've had through, it's just been business names and then application names of the people who are doing it. It's not something we've actively collected or want to collect necessarily.
I'm just saying it's something to be aware of.
Thanks. Carol.
Yeah, thank you for that. Just on the back of what Ellie said, actually, and also Abdul, there's some areas that are concerning me, which is the transparency, consistency and standardisation, because we don't want to be in a position where we've got several bespoke conversations that are going on. It needs to be consistent across the board so that everybody knows where they stand, and if they are having different fees, that they know why that is, and it's very clear for everyone else. And to Abdul's point, you know, we've had the choir, lovely choir here today with all the babies, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the point of that choir is that they are a postnatal depression choir, which also then raises issues of well-being and health, and also the category of coming under women-led organisations that we need to consider as well.
Yeah, thanks, Carol. That's actually a very good point, that we do have to, as a public body, make sure that we are being consistent and fair, and that's why I've been clear with officers and in discussions I've had with members as well. We can't have an overtly complex license scheme with lots of anomalies in it, because that will be unfair to other operators in our parks and would probably expose us to legal challenge, as well as just being unfair as first principle. So that's why I want us to that's why we do have a license fee that is consistent. You have a commercial operation in our parks, you need a license to do it, and we need to be satisfied about insurance and qualifications where necessary. However, where there are businesses that provide a public service that has wider public benefit to the community, and I mentioned health and well-being myself several times earlier today, then there are other ways that we may be able to assist that business with its costs. And Carol, you mentioned the music that we had earlier, and the babies. I think it's the first time we've had babies in the public gallery. There is a conversation. I've been encouraging that organisation, Park Service, and Christina as Director of Public Health, to look at, from that health and well-being perspective, is this an organisation that if they'd applied, say, for a Bristol Impact Fund small grant, which they could have done, would we have given it to them? Is there a way that we provide assistance for other groups providing health and well-being services in the city? Is this a way that if they came forward to us with that, we could help them? I think they probably, on the face of it, meet that criteria, but that conversation at detailed level does need to take place in between Richard, Christina, and the baby choir yoga groups and anyone else. Right, I've got Emily.
Thanks. Yeah, I think the kind of points of clarification that have been raised are really good ones and helpful. It'd be good to know, I think it'd be good if following this, we can say something about if CICs and CIOs don't need licenses, if we can make that clear, because I know from discussions we've had with groups in our ward, like that is a lot of the time groups are going down those routes rather than like charities. And I think there is a point here about, I mean, it may be that after today, hopefully we get to a point where a position that there's a majority in favour for, but it is a bit messy because the licence is already in place. And I mean, I guess the point I'm trying to make is it could have been helped if this discussion happened a lot earlier. I think it should have done at committee. I don't know why it didn't. I don't know. I don't want to speculate. I know, Stephen, you're generally in favour of things coming here and often say 9 brains are better than 1. But yeah, this is clearly something people do have an interest in. So I think going forward, if we can just make sure that things like this do come so we can all contribute.
Thanks. And as you witnessed, I think it was 88 times we met together on Friday mornings when you were vice chair. Quite often I'd say to officers, I want to know what committee members think about this, even if constitutionally it doesn't come here, either by way of a public deliberation or in a briefing or whatever. So, but there does come a point where the chair of a committee, who is effectively the cabinet member, the executive member, does have to make decisions in between meetings because we don't meet every day. And there have been a lot of adjustments made to this scheme that I was trying my best to make it as clear as possible, to deal with Carol's point, as fair as possible, but to deliver the objectives of the scheme that I inherited when I took on this position. I think we probably now have exhausted the general discussion, so we'll come to the amendment. So, Councillor... Can I jump in before the amendment? Bronwyn's pointed out to me, because this was tabled as a report for information, we just need to adopt that first as information, then we'll come on to the amendment. So can I propose that the report is in front of us, which is for noting, that we have noted it. Can somebody second that? Councillor Fraser has seconded that, and we're all happy that we've noted this report. So we can now move to a new recommendation proposed by way of amendment, which Councillor Fraser has tabled. Ed, can you read out your amendment, please?
Yep, just one moment while I find the text. I had something else prepared to say. Just one moment, please. Okay, I've got it in front of me, thank you. So the amendment itself, it proposes that underneath recommendation 1, that the Committee for Public Health and Communities notes the details of the report, adds the following text. So it says, number 2, that the committee give approval to apply the following amended small business discounts to Bristol-based small businesses operating in 7 or fewer Bristol parks and green spaces and registered to a postcode within the Bristol City Council boundary. And then it says 75% discount for Bristol-based small businesses with annual turnover under £15,000 per year, or 50% discount for Bristol-based small businesses with annual turnover of between £15,000 and £25,000 per year. Chair, can I talk a bit more around the amendment?
Right, so Councillor Fraser has proposed an amendment. At this point, I've asked for a seconder, but I'm actually going to second it myself from the chair. So we now have an amendment that is validly proposed and seconded. Now you can speak to your amendment.
Great, thanks very much, and thanks for clearing that procedure. So I'll start by just echoing Lisa and Ellie's thanks to everyone in the gallery this morning who's represented community groups and community commercial groups that operate in our parks. There's been some very impassioned statements, and I think you've really helped educate members and officers on not just the important role that those groups play, but really expose some of the nuance in this debate. I don't see this amendment as the end of that process, and so I'm pleased to see that there is going to be ongoing review of the licence scheme following this meeting as well. So it's not the end of the process. And programmes like the Bring Your Own Baby Choir and the Nordic walking groups who have come along today clearly give a lot of meaning to everyone who turned up this morning. So first and foremost, thank you. The amendment I've just said has been proposed there, so the thresholds there are all otherwise in line with what the thresholds are now, so the 7 parks or less condition, for example, is all in line. The main difference is that if the turnover of the business is under £15,000, there's an additional discount, so it takes it to 75%. So that means the price of the licence fee for those smallest businesses will be halved again. It makes the fees more equitable. I agree the burden should not fall disproportionately on some of the smallest organisations. Some of those provide real physical and mental health benefits, as we've heard today. And I hope that by doing this, we're making the scheme fairer and ensuring that those groups can still provide activities in our parks. And I hope it provides some of the consistency that Councillor Johnson just called for as well. I feel very clear that the purpose of this scheme should not be to generate a surplus for the sake of it, because what it's really about is protecting the businesses, the participants and the taxpayer as well. What was proposed by the Labour Cabinet in 2018 was motivated by profit. I accept they did not enact that in the end, but they left it on the statute books for 6 years. This amendment is instead motivated by being fair to the public. It will result in a slight loss. I think that's a very unusual step for the council to only take, but knowing what some of these small businesses with a social mission mean to people in the city, I think that's worth it. I've acknowledged the Parks Department's finances are tough. We're going to have to offset them somehow. We had a task and finish group last year, which I chaired, which looked at how we can raise commercial income. And I'm sure there's lots of those proposals in there that would generate a heck of a lot less controversy than this one has. That was wrapped up last autumn, so I really hope that we're going to see some of the fruits of that come forward soon. And I'd like to see us work with some of these CIC, CIOs, local organisations to bring forward exciting commercial ideas that can generate more income for the Parks Department and the organisation themselves to reinvest in themselves while providing services, activities and facilities that the general public can enjoy. So I'm pleased to move this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. As the seconder of that motion, I'll speak now. And to deal with the point that you made, you chaired the Parks Task and Finish group to look at commercial opportunities from our parks and our festivals and events, and there were lots of good ideas that came up in those 5 meetings that we had last year. I want Greg and Richard's team to concentrate on implementing that and bringing in potentially quite a lot of extra income into our parks. As I mentioned earlier, we spend roughly 14-15 million on parks and green spaces in the city. The licenses, fees and commercial activities that we already have in place in our parks bring in about 13 million, cafe concessions across our parks and so on. The licence scheme we have here, although it was meant to generate 55,000 as set by the previous cabinet, is clearly not, as currently predicated, going to generate anywhere near that, and if this amendment passes, will generate even less income for the parks service, but will still have protections in place for the public. I'll give the undertaking again that I've given consistently, that we are open to modifying this scheme as it's in live operation. And because the delegated authority to me, I can do that with officers as we proceed, including some of those potential one-off arrangements that we could have with organisations that provide a health and well-being benefit. But I do hope we're able to move forward so that the huge amount of officer time that has been taken up by this scheme can be released into the better benefit of our parks service. So I do hope this amendment passes. Right. Any other comments?
Yep.
Chair, Cara, then Carol.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. Can I propose that we move to the vote? And yeah. Okay.
Well.
I just, again, I wanted to refer back to the baby choir and this sense that parks are about community and connection, and that's exactly what we do want to be using parks for. And I personally felt very uneasy about the sense that's come across, which is that we're charging people to use parks. I've seen small businesses withdraw their activities in parks over this, but what has become clear is that we're not charging people to use parks, we're charging businesses to use parks. And when businesses, especially some of them, are making a huge amount of money and using the city's resources, then those businesses ought to be paying their fair share to maintain our parks. So I'm really happy that this amendment is adding the social justice element and making sure that and also what I'm hearing from the council today is that we will be listening, we'll be working with community benefit groups. We don't want to prohibit those activities, but so I'm happy. I feel satisfied and much more at ease with the idea that we are really charging businesses that are making a lot of money, and we're doing it in a way that builds in some social justice so that smallest businesses are not unfairly penalised. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Cara. That is an important point, and we do charge a lot of businesses for activities in our parks already. As I said, we bring in millions of pounds of income in our parks and green spaces. But to deal with Carol's point earlier, we do need to be consistent. If you're operating a commercial activity in a public space, then there has to be some contribution back for it. The licence scheme where it is at the moment and where it will be if this amendment passes, it's a very, very modest contribution for commercial benefit. And in some cases, that commercial benefit is substantial. Some of the personal training companies, which are national franchises operating in our parks, generate huge revenues. But we're trying to design a scheme in real time that deals with community interest companies and other micro businesses that are at the other end of the scale. And we haven't quite got that balance right yet. I acknowledge that. Hopefully, after this amendment, we'll be a lot closer to that balance. Right, I'm going to call Carol. I'm aware, Abdul, you want to move to a vote, but it needs political fairness. So I'm going to allow my Vice Chair to speak briefly, and then we'll move to a vote.
As far as I know, there's going to be another proposal anyway, so they can speak that.
Well, there might be. That's up to them.
I would like to speak. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I want to acknowledge, first of all, the good intentions behind the Green Party amendment. Supporting small businesses in our parks is important, and I think there is a shared agreement across this committee on that principle. However, I do have concerns about the approach being proposed. Firstly, this amendment seeks to adjust the financial model of the scheme without first addressing the fundamental question originally set before us, which was whether the scheme should continue at all, and that matters. Because this committee was specifically asked to consider options to discontinue the scheme, pause it for review, or continue with it, the Labour amendment would have simply ensured that we fulfilled that properly and transparently. Secondly, there are clear practical and financial considerations. Officers have advised that the proposed thresholds do not align with the current application bans. This would require additional administrative work, including recontacting applicants to reassess eligibility. So I think we need to be careful not to introduce complexity or make partial changes before we have agreed the overall direction. I just want to be clear, supporting small businesses is something we fully back, but the support needs to sit within a coherent, agreed approach to the scheme rather than being introduced in isolation.
Thank you, Carol, for those observations. Just comment on one of them as chair, that the original Labour request was for an extraordinary meeting of this committee where those options would have been tabled, but we agreed that that wouldn't happen and we'd have a substantial item instead at this committee. So just clearing that up. Right.
Make sure that that's been acknowledged.
And I also have to note the financial implications of the amendment, just to get them on the record. The officers have advised that in considering this amendment, members should be mindful that it will have a financial impact, fairly obvious. Service has advised that there is no 0 to 15k band in the licence application form. There are currently 0 to 10,000 and 10 to 25,000. The amendment proposes obviously a middle point in that. So we will need to go back to the applicants who are in the 10 to 25,000 pound band, which is the most common band, to clarify exactly where they sit. If every applicant within that band applied for a 75% discount level, then whereas the current total income of the scheme is projected to be roughly 24,000, it would fall to £19,975, a 17% reduction in what is at the moment. It's just a projection. That's the end of that accounting legalese. I'll just point out again, we do know that some people have not applied for a licence out there, and I will urge them again to apply for licence. Right. Colleagues, an amendment has been validly proposed and seconded, so the question is that the amendment be made. Can all those in favour please indicate? Thank you. And all those who are against the amendment, please indicate. Right. For the record, that was 6 members in favour of the amendment and 3 abstentions from the Labour group on that particular amendment. So the report, as we've already noted, has now been amended, and I now need to ask you to note the amended report. I shall propose that the report as amended by Councillor Fraser's amendment is now noted. Can we all indicate we're happy to note it? At this point, I'll just say, is there anything else anyone would like to bring forward? Okay, in that case, thank you everyone for... that was your opportunity to come forward. You're lucky I didn't finish my sentence. Right, Carol, so the motion, the amendment that you did have down, which reflected your request for an extraordinary committee, as I understand it, you're going to withdraw, but you might want to propose something else. If you are going to propose something else, it needs to be very clear and understandable by the committee. But you say what you want to do.
Yeah, we weren't intending to withdraw it. Can we amend it? Or amend? So,
can you just say clearly what it is you wish to do at this point? We have an amended committee report in front of us, which is passed. What would you like us further to consider?
So we'd like to propose a new proposal, amendment.
And as long as you've got a very clear sentence that we can all understand, the clerk can rule is in order, and Rusanara is here if we need help, then please read it out.
Okay. So we'd like to review this scheme at our next committee on the 11th of September for further update and review for the reasons already outlined.
Sorry, Carol, it's partly because that fan is partly affecting my hearing and I'm hot. Can you say it again?
So we'd like to propose an amendment to review this scheme at our next committee on the 11th of September for further update and review for the reasons already outlined.
Can I suggest, I'm trying to avoid an adjournment here, can I just suggest that might be more clearly worded, that we resolve to reconsider this matter at the September the 11th committee meeting to update the committee on further changes that may have been made in the interim? I'm just trying to put in clear language what you're saying.
This could be an action rather than an amendment.
Bronwyn is saying to me that what we're sort of discussing between us and what, in the interest of transparency, what Carol and I discussed in the coffee break earlier can just be an action. It doesn't have to be a formal amendment that I can say publicly as the chair of the committee I am undertaking that on September the 11th a fresh report will come to the committee reflecting the decision we've made today and any adjustments to the scheme or other relevant developments come to the committee next time. So I'm now just saying that as the chair, that is an action that I am taking to bring it forward. So we don't need, being advised, we don't need to formalise it as an amendment. I'm saying we're going to do it. Is that okay?
So will we have the opportunity to vote on it?
No, we don't need to vote on it now. I'm basically giving you what you're asking for.
Yeah, in September.
As the chair.
In September.
Yeah. So,
sorry, Chair, can we be clear that when this comes to September's meeting, there will not be a vote on it?
We'll have a similar report to what we've got today, which is a report for noting of how the scheme stands as a result of the decisions we've made today. So, for instance, for the financial implications I've read out, the officers will be able to put in that report that as a result of Greg going back to all the applicants so far, hopefully there'll be new licence applications coming in today. So I'll just repeat again, if you haven't applied for a licence, you must do so, or we're going to have to start taking enforcement action. So there are updates that can validly come before us for noting. Ed.
Chair, it's not entirely clear to me what the purpose of bringing it back to the next meeting is. There's been an incredibly thorough discussion on the matter here. I understand it will be helpful and necessary to review the progress of the scheme at some point. I'd firstly suggest more time than 2.5 months would be helpful, given the given the decision-making, the internal processes that officers have to go through. Probably quite significantly more than the concern that you'd raised, Councillor Johnson, about needing to call up people who were in between a 10 and 15k threshold to sort that admin out.
Okay.
So I want to suggest that this is brought forward to a policy chair's briefing
I've just
meeting.
I've just consulted the director. She thinks it'll take us a little time to work through the amendment that has been passed today. That is a decision that we've made. Is going to take a little time to work through because we don't know when people are going to respond to the new turnover threshold requests that Greg is going to have to ask all the people who've got a licence. The small number of people who've applied for a licence haven't yet got it, plus the people who are going to come forward. So the recommendation from the director is that we bring this back in November as an update report. Hopefully by that stage, one, the decision we've made today will understand the implications of it. If there have been other discussions with community interest companies or companies providing wider benefit have happened, we can be updated about that as well. I'm hoping I can just make this decision as chair that I'm going to commission officers to bring that report to our October meeting to allow time for...
Sorry, you'd said November, then October.
November meeting.
Okay, Stephen, thank you very much for that. And in the October meeting, will we have the opportunity to vote then?
No, so I'm proposing, the director is advising me, I'm accepting her advice as chair. It is within my gift to decide what reports come to this committee and what doesn't, that in November, at our scheduled meeting, we'll have an update report to reflect what we've decided today and any other developments that have taken place in the meantime for noting. But a report for noting, as we've done today, it is within the gift of the committee to amend if it wishes, but it will be a report for noting. Are we happy to proceed on that? Well, it doesn't matter whether we're happy, but I'm ruling that's what we're going to do.
I'd just say, Chair, I think this kind of item is more appropriate for a policy chair's briefing where you would have an opportunity to scrutinise it, but that's up to you, that's your decision.
Not really, because we'd like the opportunity to vote on it if given the opportunity, and actually that's the decision of the chair.
Right. I'm saying I'm going to end the discussion at this point, though we need a final vote on the report, that in November we'll have an update report reflecting what we've decided today and any other developments that have taken place in the interim. That will be a report, an information report for noting, but as has happened today, reports that are for noting are subject to amendment.
Sorry, Stephen, did you
I don't
say
want to give
November
people,
this time?
I'm trying to have the last word,
Yeah,
but to move on.
So it's now November.
Right. Okay. Right. So we need a final vote to adopt this, to note this report, but also to accept the amendment, which is a decision that we've made. So a report that was originally for noting has now the substantive motion that is in front of us does involve a decision. So I need to invite everyone to vote again. So all those in favour of the report that's in front of us that includes the decision as reflected in the amendment to please indicate. Right, that's 5. And anyone opposed to this? Right, and that's carried 5 with 3 abstentions and 1 absent. Just for the record, Councillor Udin informed me that because of the heat restrictions, he's had to pick up his children from school. So that's why he's left the meeting earlier, which we, of course, understand. Right, we'll take another short break. Now, 5-10... 5-minute break for people to recharge their glasses. So please come back at 22:01. Right, good afternoon, as we now are. We're all back. Welcome back to the Public Health and Communities Policy Committee of Bristol City Council. Our live link went down just before the interval. I don't know whether it's working again.
I don't know, but it is being recorded, so this
Right.
will be counted.
The meeting is still being recorded, so it can be broadcast at a later date, as it were, but the live link isn't working, unfortunately. Right, we now come to agenda item 10, which is the Council's draft playing pitch strategy from 2026 down to 2040. This report is to seek approval from the committee to adopt Bristol's draft playing pitch strategy as the city's evidence-based framework for protecting, enhancing and providing playing pitches and associated facilities. This is a key decision, which is why it's coming here, because obviously there are playing pitches right across the city. All I will say, just as a point of clarification before I hand over to Guy, is that this is strictly about playing pitches, primarily for football, rugby union, cricket and hockey, some lesser played sports as they're defined in the report, such as rugby union and apparently American football as well. It is specifically not built facilities sports such as bowls, tennis, athletics, swimming, whatever. That is in a separate strategy which work is ongoing at the moment and will be coming to us in about 6 months' time. Right. Guy Fishbourne, just for the record, is a public health specialist within the council, but he oversees all of our sporting relationships. So, Guy, can you introduce the report? And if you're able, if you want to add anything to what was said during the public session earlier about Badox Wood Nature Reserve and the possible decommission of a pitch there, you can say it now because we've had more time. If not, we will write anyway to the people who brought it up during the public session. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify, actually, rugby union isn't a lesser played sport. Rugby league is a lesser played sport.
As a Welshman, I
in
should
Southern
be
England
tarred and feathered if I got that in the heat
sure
of the moment, the wrong way around.
Okay. So do you want me to just respond to the Badox Wood issue first of all, in respect of it being included in the technical data that sits behind this playing pitch strategy? That's happened because at the moment on our database it's designated as a disused playing pitch. There is no plan to bring this back into use. And subsequent to this, we are able to go through the process, which we just need to take some advice on from other colleagues to, if you like, de-designate it and then redesignate it to whatever is the plan and the proposal. So it really does have very little impact, if you like, in terms of the supply and demand that we're seeing across our pitch supply. But also understand that it's helpful if it is de-designated as a disused playing pitch within that technical data that sits behind this particular strategy. So, in terms of the strategy itself, I'm going to try and really summarise the report that is in front of you. And the playing pitch strategy is essential for our planning purposes, but also necessary to support, which is really important, external investment through the likes of Sport England and other governing bodies. So I think probably keep that at the forefront of your mind. The strategy itself covers all outdoor pitches across the city under all types of ownership, within the BCC, Bristol City Council boundary. I think, as Stephen alluded to, what it doesn't cover is the likes of basketball courts or tennis courts and other facility types which are covered in, a bit of a mouthful, the Built Sport and Active Recreation Facility Strategy, which will be, is in the process actually of just starting to be developed. So that will be coming through in the not too distant future, sometime next year. So the playing pitch strategy is a planning and investment framework. And not a delivery plan for sport. Again, just emphasising what the Chair said there. And it's based, really importantly, on a robust evidence base of current and future need. And it underpins planning policy and decisions. Yeah, it's what we turn to when we look for that decision. And because of that, it's compliant with the National Planning Policy Framework, which stipulates local authorities have to have an up-to-date evidence base of leisure facilities such as this to inform those types of decisions that we're talking about. And it's also the first point of call for, as I said, Sport England or national governing bodies when we perhaps approach them for any funding, or any other organisation indeed across the city approaches them for funding for a playing pitch or whatever it might be. They'll always say, what does your playing pitch strategy say? Where's the evidence base? And this is what that provides. During the development, it's been supported by a stakeholder steering group, and on that stakeholder steering group we've had colleagues from Parks, planning colleagues, Sport England, and importantly the 4 national governing bodies for sport that the Chair alluded to: hockey, cricket, rugby union and football. And part of that is because they too need to be absolutely certain that what we're putting forwards is an accurate reflection of what we have on the ground today, and that we're not misinterpreting anything as a local authority with regards to what we think we have and haven't got. So it's a really, really robust process, and it is, of course, now at the point of being approved, we hope, endorsed by those governing bodies for sport and Sport England. It's been out for full public consultation, and there's been much broader community engagement ahead of that public consultation as part of the process where we've been collecting the evidence and insight. And I guess just really important to have in place with regards to encouraging participation in sport and physical activity, and I guess really ensuring that we can sort of support general health and well-being across the communities. We've got about 600 playing pitches across the city, and certainly on the count not so long ago, we had over 1,100 affiliated teams every weekend playing across those pitches. So, there's a huge amount of people using them, which is great. In terms of the key findings, which has come about as a result of the work we've been doing, there is a lack of capacity to meet current and future demand with the current pitch stock without improvements being made over the duration of the strategy term, which runs through to 2040. And because of that, it's stated that all playing field sites, pitches, should be protected. And they're protected mostly already through the local plan as important open spaces. So, they're actually designated a lot of protection already in that respect. We know that considerable work and investment is required to provide the right combination of pitches and to improve the overall quality of pitches and those ancillary facilities, changing rooms. Bristol has a lot of poor pitches. That's not unusual for a local authority. If we could upgrade some of them, we can play more games on them. That then improves the capacity. So you can see where that's important. We don't have to find new pitches or build new pitches on limited space that we have already. If we can do some improvements to the existing pitches we've got over the strategy term, that will go a long way in supporting us to meet the demand. And we need to make sure that pitches are seen as flexible spaces for multiple sports and not tied to just one individual sport. And therefore, going forwards, collaboration and coordination between sports clubs and governing bodies is going to be really important. So where we've got football on a site, can we put a cricket wicket on there? I say in the middle, on the site, so that over the summer, cricket can be played when football generally isn't played. That type of kind of shared use is really important to, endorse. And we also know that there's considerable work that's required to meet the increase in participation for the growth in sort of women and girls sports particularly, and disability sport. recognising the need for, I guess, suitable and inclusive facilities. And that's really important, especially when we're looking to put in some of the ancillary provision, but also when we think about the sort of the pitch type surfaces and things that we might be looking at improving over the coming years. So there's some of the headlines. I guess just lastly to remind ourselves that this isn't a costed delivery plan for sport, and it's not meant to be. And it doesn't commit the council to any funding at this stage. Projects that come out of this will all be subject to separate decision making. But critically, it provides a framework and evidence base for us to bid to those external partners, or indeed, internally for funding to support, any capital improvements as and when and where they've been prioritised. So in that respect, based on all of this and the huge amount of work this is behind this, we're recommending that the committee is able to adopt what we're calling currently the draft play and pitch strategy, but so that it becomes formal. Because without adoption, it's not seen by governing bodies and Sport England as a validated evidence base for them to make decisions on.
Thank you, Guy. And as you were alluding to there, this is a regulated process that every local authority goes through. There have been various earlier stages to this process. This is the culmination, all the earlier stages. Emily and I went through a chair and vice chair briefings. So this is the culmination. It's a document we need to have in place, both to form an adjunct, essentially, to our local plan for planning purposes, but also to give confidence to sport governing bodies and also funders as well, such as the lottery, that we've got a valid plan in place. I'm mindful of the time. Do members wish to contribute? And Emily, I think it's only fair that I come to you first, because like me, you've been through all the stages of this.
Yeah, thanks. I think this is a really, really good piece of work. So firstly, I just want to thank officers for the work on this. I know a lot's gone into it. And it's been great to see it develop. I think the recommendations in it are really great, and I guess if I can draw out some the stuff around improving the quality and maintenance of existing pitches to increase like how many matches can be played on those, recommendations around lighting, so games can be played in the evening, stuff around improving the quality, accessibility and capacity of changing facilities in clubhouses. No surprise to hear that we're pleased to see that one, and obviously there are some specific changing facilities we'd like to see improved, but we need those improved across the city to make sure that sport is as accessible as possible. Obviously there's reference in it to the climate crisis, and we need to make sure that pitches are more resilient. So we see so many cancellations in winter, and that really impacts sport in the city. And obviously, I think, as has been mentioned, we need to make sure that the facilities that we've got are enabling growth in women's sport, girls' sport, disability sport, and sport in older adults. And that really needs to be prioritised. So there's loads of great stuff, but we clearly do need some money. I know that this isn't for you, Guy. It's for you, Stephen, and Green colleagues. Please, can you lobby leader, deputy leader, because we really want to see some real investment in this. I think it's a great piece of work, but that would make it even better. And lastly, I'll just say on, I guess, women's sport in particular and the need for funding. So we've currently got the Women's Cricket World Cup going on in Bristol, which is great. And there's been loads of sporting events like that. And I think in order for there to be a real legacy, we need to make sure that the facilities and provision we've got in the city enables grassroots sport and things like women's cricket to really expand. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Emily. In particular for the points about making sure our facilities are fit for purpose, both in terms of basic requirements, such as not having damp and mould and broken down boilers, and other decrepitude that I've witnessed, for instance, on a visit to the Downs changing rooms, but they're also fit for purpose about making sure that everyone is able to participate in sports. In particular, women with the Downs changing rooms, for instance, are absolutely not fit for purpose for allowing male and female teams to be playing at the same time. Ed, then Abdul. Okay, Abdul first in that case.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ed, for giving way. So I welcome the playing pitch strategy, and it is a really good document and very informative. So thank you to officers. But I want to be clear that it can't just be a document that maybe the planning department relies on, and we have no oversight over. I think this committee oversight and the ability to look at it and kind of scrutinise, the report is really useful. The report is just not about land, it's about public health, it's about youth provision, it's about women and girls, it's about community safety, and it's about health inequalities. If Bristol does not have enough football, cricket, youth football, then we are not just failing sport, we're basically failing prevention. And so for many young people, a pitch is not just really a luxury, it's a safe space, a discipline, a routine, and an alternative to the streets. And for many South Asian communities, and particularly Pakistani men, we've seen the report that if you're a Pakistani male, 50 years and above, cardiovascular disease is more likely to affect
your
you.
interest.
I'm one of them. I'm a statin myself. But it's 30 to 50% more chance of an earlier health implications. So then this pitch provision becomes a health equalities issue and not just a planning issue, and that's the point I'm trying to make. But at the same time, as Greens, we're also going to be really clear that the answer cannot be, a knee-jerk land grab of Eastfield Park or St George Park or something. We have to be really careful how we plan the future. We do need more provision, but not at the expense of Bristol's most precious green spaces, the biodiversity and natural habitats. And so the question I've got is pretty simple. Can the Chair and officers commit that the Public Health and Communities members will have proper oversight of how this strategy moves into delivery, so that decisions on future pitch provision consider health inequalities, youth safety, women and girls, football, cricket, community access and environmental protection, and not just planning considerations from this point onwards? And maybe even a task and finish group for the near future, where we can really look into this and the finer detail. Thank you.
I can say yes from my perspective, but the director can give her perspective as well.
Thank you, Councillor Malik. Absolutely. What we would just bring to your attention is this is one of a suite of strategies that you need to consider together. We're required to have this strategy, and why it's framed, as Guy has very carefully explained, in this way is it is a requirement in terms of the planning, the protection of the land. Of course, that's not all. Its sister strategy is the built sports environments, or all the courts, and the overarching strategy is our Active Bristol strategy, which is about the people and the use of. Now, those three need to really be considered in the whole in order to see how we are using all of these levers to address inequality and promote physical activity. I mean, interestingly, the other segue to this is looking at active travel. So this is focusing on participation in sport activities, but actually in terms of the health and well-being impacts of physical activity, we also have to look at the safety of being able to walk in the city, using buses rather than cars, or all of that sort of thing. So there's another bit of this. If we're really looking at how we create an active city, there's the participation in activities, and then there's how active do we enable people to be in their daily lives. And guys and the team are involved in all of that. But absolutely, this committee and bringing in other committees is going to be absolutely essential to that going forwards. Thank you.
Yes, and the physical activity strategy, Active Bristol strategy, will come here, and all of those holistic points that you were making, Abdul will have a really good discussion about those at that time, and that work is live and ongoing at the moment as well. Any other comments? Sorry, Ed, yes.
Thanks very much. I did want to firstly shout out the great work that Whitehall Rugby Club have done to get their to invest in getting their changing rooms refurbished for women and girls. They had a fantastic launch about 3 months ago. There's more I could say about them, but in the interest of time, I'll leave it at that. I wanted just to hone in on the cricket element. There was some quite, if I'm honest, quite clickbaity reporting about this week, about the amount of pitches needed. It lent itself well to puns and what have you. But the suggestion here that 273 grass wickets and 34 grounds are going to be required, and I'm glad there's acknowledgement that that isn't going to be achieved by just building 34 new grounds. I mean, if everyone can find space for one in their wards, great, but I doubt it. Emily, I like what you said there around making sure there's provision, provision lighting, etc. So grounds can be used for a larger length of time, because actually that's something that is not a constraint of space, that is a constraint of facilities and time. So those are the kinds of investments that are a bit more realistic. I wanted to highlight an edge case for my own ward, which does give me some cause for concern about this. So I've spoken to him about this in advance, so I hope I'm not breaking any confidences. But one of the 2 cricket clubs situated in my own ward has been considering relocating across the border in South Gloucestershire, or a bit further up from where they are based now, still within the Bristol city limits. It's obviously very difficult to find a new site for such a thing. The main reason being is that the site they have themselves is too constrained for the amount of cricket provision they're offering. They're one of the organisations that, as mentioned in the report, leases the Coombe space for some of their teams. So one point they make is that actually if they're able to do that, that would free up some of that space. But also the challenge with this is, in order to be able to facilitate such a move for a club as theirs, they might have to look at setting off the land for development, for example. Now, whether that's the right or wrong thing to do is a much further concern down the line. But these are very practical day-to-day constraints that cricket clubs and other sports clubs are going to come up against in the city. And I think what it actually really highlights here is, and this is not me pitching for extending the boundaries of Bristol here, many have in the past and many will in the future, but because we have such a constrained amount of physical space, there is going to be a real limit to what we can, aside from the finances, there's going to be a real limit to what we can actually achieve here. And the reality is that for some cricket teams, for some football teams, the best space for them could be over the border somewhere in Mangotsfield or in Hanham or up in Bradley Stoke. That's not because I want to discourage those organisations from staying within the city. I'd rather encourage them. I'd rather do the opposite, and I hope this strategy helps towards that. But it just feels like there's a slight flaw in how we can actually deliver this, given the spatial constraints that we have as a city. We might need to think quite creatively about that as well. But thank you for bringing the report, Guy.
Thanks, Ed. I guess this is a needs assessment, as Guy was saying earlier. It's not a delivery plan, and it's certainly not a funded one. But Guy, do you want to add something?
Thanks, Ed. I think you've just illustrated some of the challenges that we've got. But I guess just to note that the assessment of supply and demand takes what you've just articulately said into account with regards to we have imported and exported demand. When we talk about the need, the demand, and also the actual facility provision itself, and specifically for cricket, there is a significant amount of exported demand, i.e. they go over the border and play in South Gloss or the neighbouring authority because they've got more space. Equally, we have some imported demand too, not necessarily for cricket but for other sports, because sport thankfully knows no boundaries in that respect. So that's taken into account. Certainly where cricket is concerned, there are opportunities to consider sites for cricket wickets, which can go some way towards supporting the demand. We are working really closely with the ECB, the English Cricket Board, and colleagues at the Gloucestershire Cricket Foundation, and with some of the clubs, and I think I perhaps know the club you're talking about. So cricket, I think, is a really live issue for us for all manner of reasons, and you know, with the exported demand, what that does is limit sometimes the growth in the children's activity, or women and girls, because you know they don't have the same opportunity. Children don't have the same opportunity to travel so much. So it's an important issue. You know, the English Cricket Board at the moment, they would love to. They have a sort of a strategy for the country, which is about installing some indoor cricket domes. You know, like cricket wickets, but indoor covered spaces. You know, that type of thing could go a long way in Bristol to accommodating some of the demand for training, not so much for, you know, games as such, but you know, I think there are opportunities. Well, indeed, there's opportunities to explore, but I think you rightly highlight the challenge that we face.
Thank you. I think we've probably said all we need to say on this. This is a decision, so if I just read out the recommendations, they are that the committee, 1, adopts Bristol's draft playing pitch strategy from 2026 to 2040 as set out in Appendix A1 as the city's adopted playing pitch strategy. Secondly, notes the consultation that is set out in Appendix F and notes what we've been saying, that the approval of this strategy does not commit the council to any financial expenditure and that any investment arising from it will be subject to separate decision-making processes and available resources. So I move that. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Johnson. So the report is now with us for vote. All those in favour, please indicate. That is adopted unanimously, so thank you very much. You both need to stay there for the next item, which is item 11, which is Whitehall Athletics Track. This report is to seek approval for the Council's long-term commitment to fund the major capital lifestyle replacement works that are required to maintain the Whitehall Athletics Track surface, including the respray that is due in 2028 and the full surface replacement that is expected within the next 15 years. This includes a forecast contribution from the Council of 58%, with a potential exposure of the whole lot, 100%, subject to delivery of projected operator surpluses to safeguard accreditation, safety and continued community use of the facility. And this is a key decision because, although it's specifically in Whitehall, the amount immediately involved, the respray, doesn't meet our threshold of $500,000, but because it is a citywide facility, it's coming here. I'm hoping this will just be a straightforward decision for us. And just to make clear, this is the city's actual athletics track. In Whitehall, it is not the track that was decommissioned 16 years ago in Whitchurch. It is the subject of a different report that is going to Strategy and Resources Committee. Guy, do you want to add anything?
Thank you, Chair. I guess just to add just a little bit of background there. This particular track was built in 2010, as the Chair said, is the city's main athletics facility, with £1 million worth of council investment at the time. And although the site is leased to the Cabot Learning Federation, and managed day by day by the school, the council, as the landowner, remains responsible for the major capital life cycle costs. The track is, used by Bristol's only affiliated track and field athletics club, which is Bristol and West Athletics Club being the main sort of user, but it's also used by schools, clubs, the universities and other community groups, and of course plays a really important role in physical activity and health outcomes, as we know sport does sort of such a great job at. I guess again, it's been said already, it is the city's only accredited 400 metre track, and being that, losing or allowing the facility to decline without undertaking the maintenance works that are required would significantly weaken the city's sort of athletics provision and that sort of key infrastructure. And in doing so, clearly directly impact on a number of different things that we're really looking to achieve around prevention and sort of tackling inequalities. So, yeah, really important. There's opportunities to grow participation there, which we're working proactively with the school and the club to do. But without the commitment to invest in that life cycle work, and it's the full track respray in 2028, which is the first significant piece of maintenance needs to be done. Without that, the track will lose its track mark accreditation, and with that, clubs won't be insured to run on it and train on it, and then the negative impacts all sort of fall out of that. So I guess nothing more really, Stephen, on that.
Thanks, Guy. Any questions or observations? Abdul and Lisa?
So just to better understand the arrangement, obviously, I would support this. This is somewhere I live very closely. I went to Whitehall School. I know the pavilion has been taken over by Whitehall Primary School, and they function from there. And the City Academy obviously benefits from this provision as well. So, yeah, no problem. But I just want to understand the arrangement. So the CLF, we provide maybe for a peppercorn rent, and then so what is the actual arrangement? Just as a governor of one of the schools, it's something that I would like to... I could probably ask them as well, but now we've raised the question here, it would be good to know.
So the track is built on the off-site playing fields for the school. So it's within their red line lease that they have for the academy. And the arrangement that exists is one whereby we, back in 2010, invested in the facility, and they, the school, would manage the day-to-day operation and maintenance costs. So that is the arrangement. But what's quite clear is that, and this isn't just unique to Whitehall, this is something that's typical of a lot of athletics facilities up and down the country because of the nature of the sport. The income that's generated by the bulk of operators for these community facilities is insufficient to cover those big capital life cycle costs that we're beginning to see are needing to be done now. What they can do, and what the school have done a good job at over the years, is covering the sort of the day-to-day maintenance costs, because the income that they generate is able to support that just about. But there is a need to, I guess, drive throughput for all number of reasons. It's probably not being maximised to its full kind of potential, but also, with that, comes higher fees and things, hiring fees, which of course are important to ensure the long-term sustainability. So the current arrangement is quite simple. It's on a playing field that is the schools. They've got a 99-year lease, or 125, or 909. I'm not too sure how long, but it's a long lease. They are responsible for day-to-day management. We have nothing to do with that. But we are liable for the sort of the big ticket life cycle costs. But working with them going forwards, we will set up a sort of a tripartite steering group between the council, the school, and the athletics club, being a main user and the main hirer of the facility, and will ensure that we have sort of oversight of the performance, the financial performance, and any surpluses the school make above and beyond those day-to-day operational costs that need to be covered will be ring-fenced by the school and sort of reserved, if you like, as a I don't want to call it a single, a life cycle fund. And those arrangements will be captured between the council and the school in a legal agreement. So we are clear on our obligations and sort of the financial arrangements going forwards. And the school are fully supportive of that. They've been really good. They've been really good.
Okay, and just I suppose a sub-question to that is that obviously there are huge amounts of grants available for sports, running tracks. January, I think this year, something was announced from central government. So who would be the responsible person to kind of take that forward? Would that be something that we would lobby CLF to do on behalf of the council? Would the council try to take advantage of those type of things when they come our way?
Yeah, I mean, as a local authority, we'll always try and take advantage of those grants, as and when they're available. We work closely with England Athletics, and in fact, they part-funded some of the work that we've done to get us to this point, really, with regards to trying to introduce a new sort of operating model. So colleagues in our team, will always be looking out for opportunities like that. And we have been working closely with the school too. So, whichever is the most applicable organisation to apply for that type of grant, indeed, would be the organisation who would.
Thank you.
Lisa.
Thank you. This is like a good news story, really. It's really good to see investment in this facility and athletics in general. My question is around kind of equity of access in terms of it really being the only invested in athletics facility in the city. How can we make sure that as many people from across our city as possible are supported to be able to get there and make use of this facility to really kind of encourage people into athletics?
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, one of the reasons it was located in sort of that part of the city was to be more central. So there was more of an equal distance, if you like, for residents to travel. And I know there's still barriers and there's still challenges to that. Athletics, at best, is a sport which has one of these types of facilities per local authority area. So, you generally wouldn't get more than one of these because they are, and would likely be sort of financially unsustainable and unviable because you're all competing for the same users, you're all competing for the same sort of volunteer base who sort of support clubs and things. Athletics for a lot of people starts in schools and in their local communities, whether that's park runs or measured running routes or so. You don't need this type of infrastructure to get into athletics. But if you do want to progress, of course, we need to try and create the pathway and the opportunities for people to access these more sort of strategic in nature facilities. And we'll be looking to work with the likes of Bristol and West, to do some of that work in the schools and in the communities. And then as and when, those opportunities arise, we need to, look at how we get people to these more centralised facilities.
Right, looks as though we're all done. So I'll just move the recommendations that the committee approves the proposal the Bristol City Council commits to fund the major life cycle replacement costs associated with the Whitehall athletics track surface, including the respray required by 2028 and the full track replacement required within 15 years, as identified through specialist surveys. Secondly, authorises the Executive Director for Adults and Communities in consultation with the Chair of the Public Health and Communities Committee to take all steps required to finalise and enter into the necessary legal agreements to reflect the roles, responsibilities and financial arrangements relating to the athletics track life cycle and operational model. Thirdly, notes the financial forecast, including the estimated operator contributions of 238,594, very precise estimate, which will offset the life cycle costs over 15 years, and that the Council's net liability is forecast to be £334,137, equating to approximately £22,276 per year, but this could increase to full track surface life cycle liability of £572,731 over 15 years, equivalent to approximately £38,132 per year, if the operator doesn't generate sufficient surpluses. And fourthly, notes that failure to undertake the required life cycle works will lead to a loss of trackmark accreditation, reduced usage by schools and clubs, and deterioration of important citywide community sports and infrastructure. So I move those recommendations. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Johnson. So those are moved and seconded. Can I see all those in favour? That is unanimous of the remaining committee members. Thank you very much. Right, our final item is our regular look at our data and metrics, which is a report for noting, and people can speak to it if they wish, but I don't think anyone would think any the less of us if people only had the briefest of observations at this point. Patsy's coming forward because this covers both directorates that report to this committee. Do either of you want to highlight anything before I bring in members?
I don't think so, Chair. We had one fairly recently. Just to note, this is the Q4 report, so it's the end of last year, so in terms of the period that you're looking at.
Thank you, Chair. I think there's only one performance measure of note for management of place, and that is the capital delivery. At Q4 last year is the only one behind target. We have had several retirements, several flexible retirements, people moving on to other teams in the council. We are actively recruiting and trying to address that, and we do expect performance to improve in the coming year. The other ones, I think we've only got 3 or 4, managing for nature and our tree planting remain on track, but happy to answer any questions.
Right, so I've got indicating Ed. At the moment, only Ed.
Right, well, I'll be super brief. Firstly, pleased to see that in Q4, the level of MMR vaccination coverage in 5-year-olds went up, but I have also noted in the Tier 2 outcomes that the level for 2-year-olds has gone down. So I'm going to say this every time it comes up, because one of the key reasons why is misinformation that giving your child the MMR jab could cause them to become autistic. I am autistic, and I can tell you rightly now, I would much rather have autism than measles, mumps or rubella. So please get your child vaccinated if you haven't.
Appreciated, Ed. And this is one of the highest priorities for our health protection work. We do it with our health colleagues and schools and others. And yeah, it's very pleasing to see the confidence coming up amongst those with 5-year-olds and above. And I guess it's people with very small babies where we've still got that lack of confidence. Thank you.
Do we know why there's that disparity then? Because we've had the success with the 5-year-olds and now it's changed with the under 2s, is it?
Yes, so we have got lower levels of vaccination overall for all immunisation programmes across the city. So what this report is showing you is that we are doing well and better for MMR vaccinations in the 5-year-old group. So that's very pleasing because that's children who are starting school, they're protected early, and that will flow through life. But what Ed is picking up is that we're not doing so well with the babies. And I'm just surmising that what we can see is confidence, growing confidence for children at that 5-year-old stage, but we've got more to do, and we will do through our family hubs and all of our early years work. But thank you for championing the work.
Thanks. Thank you both for raising the subject of vaccinations and child protections. I spent some time last week with a Family Hubs network and also did a home visit to a family in St George and looked through the Child's Red Book that records everything that happens the way in the immunisations, etc. And just like to reiterate what Ed was saying as well, that please do get your child the double dose in the case of MNR, and we're coming up to that point in the annual cycle where school holidays will soon begin, and I think the local authority, national government will do the usual prepare your child for returning to school or starting for school and everything that you should have in place. Right, so all we need to do with this is to note the report, which I think we can do together. So I'd like to thank everyone for your forbearance today, both members and officers. According to my phone, Apple thinks it's 28 degrees outside in Bristol. I think it may be warmer in here, who knows. But thank everyone for their forbearance today. Our next meeting is the 11th of September, and I look forward to seeing you all then. Thank you.